Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Cabbage Head Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Coffee Summon Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Today was a bright and busy day, and I found myself humming as I strolled around the city park. It was a common activity I indulged in after spending hours on schoolwork. Anything to take my mind off English for the day was a win in my book. A brown bag with a small stitched All Might face swung by my side, feeling nearly weightless despite being filled with to-go coffee cups and lids. "Good afternoon," a voice called, startling me from my walk. I turned to face a casually dressed group of what appeared to be college students. A tall girl with a defined build and kind eyes spoke again, drawing my attention. "Excuse me, but are you the coffee kid that walks through this park every day from 2 to 5? The one everyone talks about?" she asked with a twinkle in her eyes and a bounce in her step. "My friends and I have been dying to try this supposed god-tier drink for the longest time. And if I don't find him, I swear I'm going to lose it," she exclaimed. Beside her, a guy with snow-white hair rolled his eyes and stepped forward. "Sorry about that, you don't have to pay attention to what this coffee enthusiast says," he remarked, ignoring the small shove she gave his arm. "She's been avoiding coffee to get the full experience of this coffee, whatever that means," he scoffed, clearly having dealt with this behavior longer than he preferred. "I hope you both haven't just embarrassed us in front of a stranger who's the wrong guy." A light, nervous chuckle sounded from beside the bouncing girl. I couldn't help but giggle, unable to contain my reaction. "You don't have to worry. I am, in fact, the coffee kid you're referring to," I reassured them, noticing the tension in their shoulders ease. "Oh, thank the heavens. My luck is finally turning," the girl exclaimed. "Ayano, can you please calm down?" a voice hissed from the last member of the group. This bunch sure was lively, but I didn't mind. It's one of the reasons I love the park. So many different personalities and quirks walk through the trails daily. There is always someone interesting to converse with. Granted, although I'm still not the best at social skills, I try my hardest to work on them while I have the opportunities. "I do have a name, you know," I lightly teased the girl who promptly slumped in response to her scolding. "Izuku Midoriya, a pleasure to meet you all," I greeted with a warm smile. "It's a marvel to meet you too." Ayano popped back up with newfound vigor. "We'd like 6 cups of—" "Darling, we are not buying you 3 cups of—" "Who said I need your money? You're borderline broke. And who do you think is going to end up carting the 3rd cup, huh?" "I can assure you cost is not an issue," I interjected to stop their quarreling. "What do you mean?" one of them asked skeptically. "Oh, I'm not sure if word has gotten around yet. But I'm not collecting money anymore, nor did I want to in the beginning, in all honesty," I admitted shyly. It felt like they were trying to figure out if I was lying or not. It didn't help that the rest stared at me as if I had grown 2 heads or something. "Why would you do that?" one asked, genuinely confused. "Why are you complaining? If anything, I would take you as one to jump on this rare opportunity in a heartbeat," another questioned. "Still, if this coffee is so wonderful or whatever, why aren't you charging anything?" the skeptical one asked with a glare. "You aren't some poser trying to give out something harmful, are you? What? And no, that's not it at all," I yelped. "I just don't see a reason to charge money for something that costs me nothing. Well, apart from the cups and lids, but I digress. I find small conversations like this and people's smiling faces after they try my coffee to be the best kind of payment there is," I earnestly admitted, lightly scratching the side of my face in embarrassment. A brief moment of silence passed before I was suddenly engulfed in a hug that made me yelp. "You're such a kind and gentle kid. If anything happened to you, I'd be so upset." The girl was quickly pulled away by her embarrassed friends who looked on the verge of a breakdown. "If you want a single drop of coffee, then you really need to calm down this instant." "I'm so sorry," one of them said with a twitching eyebrow. It's quite all right," I stuttered and brushed myself down, still reeling from all of this excitement. "How about I get you all started with a cup or 2? "That'd be great, thank you," one sighed tiredly and looked at his watch, seeming even more determined to get this over with to stop any further embarrassing moments from occurring. A small cheer from the restrained female in the back made him groan once more. I reached into my bag and grabbed 6 to-go cups and handed them to the guy. He reluctantly asked his friends to let go of the one person who was most excited for this experience. She grabbed 2 cups as he passed them out to his friends, only to groan when he realized he would end up carrying someone else's coffee. He looked up at me as if just realizing the cups were empty. Am I missing something here? I fiddled with my sleeve in nervousness at their intense looks. This never gets any less nerve-wracking, huh? Jay, just hold out your cup in front of you. It'll make sense in a second, I promise. They complied and held their cups straight out in front of them after lining up side by side. None of them seemed to know what to expect, and I couldn't help but chuckle. I rolled up my soft sweater sleeves and exhaled softly. Focusing, I took a long deep breath before staring at my scarred fingers with half-lidded eyes. Gingerly, like second nature, I lifted one of my hands and allowed it to glide smoothly through the air in a hypnotizing, flowing state, almost as if I were casting a spell with a wand. The group observed as small droplets of warm, steaming coffee began to bead from seemingly nowhere aside from the pure air itself. As more and more continued to combine and build up, I lifted a second hand to form a compact orb-like floating ball of steaming hot coffee. I was careful to keep it under my control as I looked at all the cups. After estimating that I had created a suitable amount of coffee to fill each cup, the mass separated into 6 different streams of ribbons that twisted and mingled around one another. They shimmered in the sunlight with a colorful array until they eventually filled the separate cups. A small dissipating whirlpool was all that was left in the warm brown concoction before falling still. Each of the dazed students stared, mouth agape, in complete silence at me. That was until a borderline sob interrupted the serene silence. "This is the best coffee I have ever tasted," she cried, taking another sip with her eyes closed to bask in its delectable flavor. "It burns, but it's so good." "Idiot," the others simultaneously muttered before taking a sip for themselves. I felt a wide grin overcome my features as one by one they each were filled with something akin to bewilderment, disbelief, or bliss. Maybe a mix of all 3? "I hope it's not too hot or anything," I asked as their silence stretched on longer than comfortable. Suddenly, they all shouted, "This is amazing," which made me jump and blush in embarrassment. "Coffee this amazing, and you're not charging a single penny. Are you out of your mind?" Snow White sputtered in disbelief. "Goodness, kid, you're something else," someone added. I shrugged in response. "Who knows, I might be. With a talent like that, you have to be. Please marry me," one of them joked. "Ayano no," another replied, laughing. "Ayano yes," came the playful retort. Guys, I don't mean to be a downer, but I just got a text from Sensei. If we don't hurry back to school for the class meeting in 15 minutes, we'll have to make a whole presentation on why we should always be early to events. Let's go." The group scrambled to put the lids on their cups and rushed off. "Thank you again for the coffee. It was perfect. I'm sure we'll visit again soon," they called back. "Have a nice day," I called out to their retreating figures, giggling as I continued my walk. It's enjoyable, doing what I do. I've been giving out coffee for as long as I can remember, thanks to Mom's suggestion. I was surprised to find I actually enjoyed the change in pace. I've been doing this so much that the police gave me a license to do so legally. I thought it was odd, but I did give the officers coffee, so I guess that convinced them. I'm just grateful I'm allowed to use my talent in public without breaking the law. To show my thanks, if I see them patrolling my neighborhood, I often greet them with a cup or two. I sighed softly and pulled out my pro-hero-themed phone to see that it was nearing 5:30 p.m. It was going to get dark soon. I might as well finish this last lap and head home a little early today. I was getting a bit tired anyway. I grabbed a new cup out of my bag and filled it with my talent, this time without such a flashy display. I popped on the lid while suppressing a shiver from the chilly breeze. Just as I was about to head home, I spotted a very tired-looking man dressed in all black. A scarf was wrapped around his neck as he lounged on a park bench. He had serious dark circles and looked on the verge of giving up entirely. I walked up to him. It might not have been the smartest move, considering he was giving off an intimidating aura, but I approached him anyway and offered him the cup in my hand. "Sir? Excuse me, but would you like some free coffee?" I asked, slightly concerned. He looked like he was about to drop. He peered up at me with cold, dark eyes until he noticed the license pin to my sweater. Upon seeing this, he immediately took the cup from my hands, which had the words, "A cactus is just a really angry cucumber," printed on it. "Thanks," he gruffed out tiredly. I stood patiently as he took a sip. In all honesty, I wasn't expecting a coherent reaction from him, but I saw a sparkle in his eye shortly after tasting it. "What's your name, kid?" he asked. His question caught me off guard, but I quickly responded, "Izuku Midoriya, sir." "Midoriya then," he started with a thoughtful look. "Are you perhaps interested in a job?" I gawked at him in surprise. This was not what I was expecting from the man on the bench. "Let me elaborate. My life practically depends on caffeine," he began. "And honestly, having a living, breathing coffee maker to supply me with it doesn't sound half bad," he said, swirling the contents of the cup before taking another sip. I stared at him for a few seconds. "This is so sudden. I apologize, I just wasn't expecting." "You weren't expecting the guy on the bench to offer you a job as an assistant? Well, welcome to the real world, kid." I still couldn't wrap my mind around the fact of being offered. Wait a second. What if I've been scouted by a well-paying company or something of the sort? I turned back to the man who sipped on the drink. He may not look it, but he definitely brings an air of professionalism to the table. And Mom would be so happy if I were to hold down a well-paying job. Maybe I could see what this whole offer is about. What if I were interested? Then I'd kindly ask you to meet me tomorrow morning around 8 a.m. in front of the UA Academy building. He yawned and stood up to stretch. "What do you say, kid? I ain't got all day." Izuku hesitated, but then decided to take a chance. "I'll accept. Then I'll see you there," the man replied, waving as he began to walk away. "Wait," Izuku called out, recovering from his surprise. "I never got your name." The man paused, looking back over his shoulder. "Aizawa, Shota Aizawa." Izuku's mind raced. "Oh no, what do I wear? How do I act? I'm an idiot. How did I not realize I was talking to Eraserhead, the underground hero with a stern yet admirable presence?" He thought about asking for an autograph but doubted Eraserhead would bother with a fanboy like him. What if I mess up? What if I spill coffee on him? What if he hates me? The thought of disappointing one of the best stealth heroes was overwhelming. "Izuku? Dear." His mother's concerned voice broke through his panic. "You're mumbling again, hun." Izuku looked up to meet his mother's worried eyes. That morning he had finally searched the name Shota Aizawa and discovered he was indeed the pro-hero Eraserhead. The realization had left him on the verge of a panic attack, especially after mistaking him for a sleep-deprived man on a park bench. Inko sat down beside Izuku, ready to talk. "I know what you're thinking, dear, but everything is going to be fine. You've worked before, so why should this be any different?" "This is going to be completely different from my other job, Mom. I'm going to be making coffee for Eraserhead," Izuku exclaimed, running his hands through his hair. "I only worked as a part-time barista for 2 months before the store changed owners. I could mess up, and if I did, I would be so disappointed in myself. And you probably would be too." Inko felt her heart ache at his words. "Izuku." She gently took his hand and gave it a comforting squeeze. "He asked for you. It's not like you hunted him down for this job, right?" "I guess so. But..." "No buts. You need to stop doubting yourself," Inko insisted. "I have always been proud of you. You'll always be the light of my life. Believe in yourself more, sweetie. This is something you should try for the sake of trying something new. It's a rare opportunity, and you won't get another chance like this if you back out now. You'll regret it if you let this pass." Izuku considered her words, feeling a sense of guilt. She was right. How often does a simple citizen get offered a job by a pro-hero? The details would reveal themselves in time. You'd finally get to fulfill your dream. Inko said with shining eyes. You may not be fighting villains, thank goodness, but you'll be working under a hero. Izuku chuckled nervously. He knew his mother never liked the idea of him fighting dangerous criminals, but she supported his dreams. Still, she had a point. It had been his dream for years to meet a hero personally, talk to them, and even get an internship. Izuku took a deep breath, trying to gather his courage. Yeah, Mom, you're right. I should do this, he said, standing up with determination. I shouldn't let this chance pass. I promise to make you proud and try my hardest. Oh no, is that the time? He dashed upstairs toward his room, leaving his mother, Inko, smiling softly at his enthusiasm. Inko sighed and leaned back into the couch, her eyes wandering around the living room she had worked hard to maintain. Her gaze landed on an old picture on the coffee table. She picked it up, tracing the frame with her fingers. Oh, Izuku, she whispered, looking at the innocent smile in the photo. How much you've grown, she murmured, lying on her side. Even after everything, you still surprise me every day. My sweet baby. She hugged the picture frame tightly, cherishing it as if it were the most precious thing in the world. But could never be disappointed in you. Meanwhile, Izuku pondered his outfit. I don't want to dress too formally, but too casual might be off-putting, he thought. A nice sweater should do the trick. He sifted through his collection of sweaters and hoodies, finally picking a warm pastel brown one. After quickly getting ready, he headed downstairs, drawn by the delicious smell of breakfast. His mom had prepared scrambled eggs and toast. Izuku smiled gratefully at her. Thank you for the food, he said, appreciating the golden brown toast. As he enjoyed his breakfast, he noticed his mom bringing out a container. You bought dango? He asked excitedly. She nodded, laughing. I figured you could use a treat. You're growing up so fast, and I wanted to spoil my favorite child a bit, she said playfully. Well, what are you waiting for? Eat up, dear, she encouraged, and Izuku happily obliged. Bye, Izuku. Be safe, don't do anything I wouldn't do, his mom called out as he left. He waved back, chuckling as she quickly shut the door against the chilly wind. Plugging in his earbuds, he started his 20-minute walk to UA, checking his phone to ensure he was on time. Satisfied, he shuffled his music to something upbeat to boost his mood and calm his nerves. As he walked, he thought about the job he was heading to. He knew providing coffee was part of it, as the man he was meeting had mentioned. Izuku wondered if the man was working nearby, recalling he had stopped following his work a few years back due to other distractions. I used to constantly monitor many other heroes, but how exciting would it be if I became his sidekick or something unexpected like that? I giggled to myself and kept walking down the gray sidewalk. The sky was crystal clear, and the sun was bright, a perfect day for a morning walk. With such a peaceful atmosphere, my mind soon fell into a hypnotized state, enticed by the rhythm of my footsteps and the music. Before I knew it, I had arrived at the gates of UA Academy. This place was huge. Hundreds of students were walking through the gates. I had seen UA before, but seeing it this close in person was breathtaking. This was the school I wanted to attend in my youth. I smiled fondly at my old dreams, though they sadden me now. It's best to dream realistically from now on. While I was busy admiring the building, I almost didn't notice my potential new boss approaching until he was directly in front of me. I see you've managed to make it to the front gate. Aizawa spoke in the most tired and unmotivated voice I've ever heard. I nodded curtly. It's an honor to be here, sir, I said politely, bowing in greeting. I quickly raised my head and braced for my apology. I just wanted to apologize for yesterday. I had no idea you were a hero at the time, and I'm terribly sorry for my mistake. Aizawa was baffled but quickly composed himself with a sigh. Look, I don't care about what you thought about me yesterday. Whether I'm a hero or not has nothing to do with how you should treat me. That includes this moment and onwards if you choose to accept the terms concerning your job. Not saying that I don't want to be treated with respect, but I'm just a normal person too, he told me, realizing I was probably a fan. I shoved down my embarrassed blush and nodded. Yes, sir, sorry, sir. I'll try to keep that in mind. I guess that'll do for now. Aizawa shrugged and tossed me a UA school-colored lanyard with a card attached. Printed across the card was my identity and name in bold, And directly under that, the word guest. That's the best I could get on short notice, the hero yawned, dismissing my curious expression. What's this for? It gives you authorized access to enter the school, his blunt voice replied. How are you expected to work under me if you can't enter the building? Wait a minute. I widen my eyes. You can't possibly mean that you... My mouth fell open in shock. You mean to tell me that you work here? Yes, I do work here. How observant of you, the older man drawled and turned his back on the gaping teenager. I'm a UA teacher too, and I have a homeroom that needs attending to. So I'd appreciate it if we could speed things along. As he said this, he began walking towards the entrance, his scarf and black hair fluttering slightly in the wind. The curly-haired boy's eyes looked as if they would pop any second. This was too surreal. Since when did Eraserhead become a teacher? That was definitely something Izuku wouldn't have expected. The pro-hero sighed once he realized he wasn't being followed and shot a look of annoyance his way. Are you coming or not? Shota snapped, bringing Midoriya back to reality. Right? Yes, sorry, I'm right behind you, sir, he replied with a startled gulp. Is this even real? He asked himself joyfully, feeling as if he was about to burst. The young boy quickly scrambled to follow the hero, all while admiring the building. He gingerly stepped past the gates and still couldn't believe it. He never would have fathomed the thought of getting to walk past that gate, and knew it was directly in front of him. Izuku almost felt like crying, thinking he might actually accept a job in such a place. As the hero led Izuku through the halls, the fanboy couldn't help but gaze upon the interior in awe. It had the traditional style of any big public school, but it was 10 times the size. Everything was so clean and crisp, and absolutely massive. He could say that this entire experience left little room for disappointment already. And he'd only been here for 5 minutes. Though, as amazing as it was, Izuku found himself glancing at Aizawa. The man was definitely more intimidating in person, especially now that he knew who he formerly was. But it seemed like he didn't want to be idolized in the slightest, even going as far as to detest such actions if Izuku continued to work with him. Izuku admired Aizawa for his ability to do the right thing without seeking recognition. Unlike famous heroes, underground heroes like Aizawa worked in the shadows, often collaborating with lesser-known figures to tackle larger threats. Izuku's interest in underground heroes began after a talk show featuring All Might mentioned a mission involving Eraserhead. Intrigued, Izuku researched and found a blog about underground heroes, where Eraserhead was ranked highly. Izuku, eager to learn more, shyly asked Aizawa about his teaching. Aizawa explained that he taught Class 1A at UA, conducting his own entrance exam to ensure only those ready for the hero path were admitted. Izuku appreciated Aizawa's tough-love approach, understanding the importance of evaluating students beyond just their powers. Aizawa admitted that while he had successfully guided Class 1A, they were the most challenging group he taught. Despite their egos and rivalries, which often led to more paperwork, Aizawa's eyes showed pride in his students' progress. Izuku listened intently, recognizing the dedication Aizawa had for his students, even if they occasionally tested his patience. Midoriya paid little attention to the clear annoyance shown by Aizawa, instead focusing on how much it seemed Aizawa had already made an impact on the students from day one. Izuku hid a small giggle, finding Aizawa's rants about his students similar to his Auntie Mitsuki. Even so, I bet it's such a cool job, Izuku said, his eyes sparkling. Aizawa looked at the boy curiously before chuckling, yeah, I guess it is. Shota led Izuku to the teacher's lounge, which matched UA's expensive interior but felt more welcoming and warm compared to everything else he'd seen so far. His eyes caught a collection of lockers beside the entrance, each labeled with a teacher's name. Izuku's eyes widened when he saw his own name on one of the lockers, right underneath, Yamada Hizashi, next to Aizawa's locker. Oh yeah, Aizawa started as he sat on the couch. I had a locker prepared for you. Set your stuff in there if you need to. Are you sure? Izuku asked, stumbling over his words at Aizawa's pointed look. It's just that I might not even end up working here. He scratched the back of his neck. But you've already gone through the trouble of setting up a locker for me, and I just don't want to come off as wasteful or anything, Izuku confessed, feeling a pang of guilt, which did not go unnoticed by Aizawa, who briefly frowned. Your name can easily be removed if you find the offer unsuitable, Aizawa shrugged, trying to ease him. I just figured you might appreciate not lugging around unnecessary baggage. Half of the staff doesn't even use those old things anyway, so don't worry about it. If I intended to guilt-trip you into staying, I wouldn't have resorted to locker privileges, he scoffed, getting a small giggle in response. Midoriya felt his shoulders loosen in relief, quickly replaced by excitement. I guess you have a point. Well, I normally do. Izuku gingerly opened the gray locker and placed his backpack inside. He pulled out a cup with the saying, "Coffee is good. Coffee is great. Always choose coffee, there is no debate." After grabbing a lid and closing the door, he handed Aizawa the cup and lid before sitting across from him. "May I?" he hesitantly asked. Aizawa scanned the boy before nodding. With a deep breath, Izuku waved his hand, creating a steaming brown liquid that poured into the cup. The stealth hero's eyes seemed to grin, and he took a long sip. "Yeah, this is just what I needed to start my day." "You truly are a godsend," he said, taking another sip as Midoriya flushed from the praise, covering his face in embarrassment. "Your quirk control is also something to admire," Aizawa pointed out after lowering his cup. "Not a single drop out of place, and your form looks good for an average citizen," he hummed, looking at the boy basking in praise. "Most people don't train their quirks like that without a goal in mind." It's not all that special," Izuku squeaked, lowering his shaky hands. "I just did what anyone would do to train their quirk," he said, red-faced. "No clue why you're embarrassed with a gift like this. It's strong, and if you train it properly, you could accomplish many things. But I digress." Now, Aizawa cut himself off, and Izuku immediately stiffened. "Let's get down to business. I assume you want a further explanation on what you'll be expected to do if you accept this job." Izuku nodded, trying to collect himself with deep breaths. Before Aizawa continued, he quietly examined the boy in front of him one last time. Izuku fiddled with his sweater, likely trying to ground himself to pay attention. He could hold his own in conversation, but he didn't exude confidence. From his earlier reaction to the compliment about his quirk, he didn't seem to take praise well, yet he knew how to praise others, like he did in front of the school and in the hall. This was likely due to years of low self-esteem. They'd have to work on that. Aizawa's hard eyes softened as he observed Izuku's mannerisms and body language. The teen almost reminded Aizawa of Hisashi back in high school. Aizawa quickly coughed to snap himself out of his irrelevant thoughts and began speaking. "For starters, you will be required to follow me throughout the day, providing me coffee and minor assistance as I teach my classes. It'll be nothing major, so I wouldn't stress," he reassured Izuku, who looked a bit wary. "If anything, the most you'd be tasked with is just watching over the class if I were to step out for a bit or if I needed a student supervised to the nurse's station for any reason." Izuku nodded in understanding. He wasn't sure if he'd be the best in those situations, but they didn't seem too difficult. It was better than actually assisting in teaching, which he had feared. His social anxiety was already on edge. "When I have a break, you'll have a break as well. I take many power naps when I teach, so account for those or whatever," Aizawa added, as if it were a normal occurrence. Izuku had a feeling he couldn't prepare for whatever situations might arise. He pushed the thought aside as Aizawa's expression turned serious. "As I hope you would have presumed, I expect you to treat my students with the utmost respect. Any ill intent directed towards them will not be tolerated. Do not instigate fights, do not encourage unsuitable behavior, and most importantly, do not pry into their social life or personal problems. As long as my students are under my care, I will not allow them to be mistreated in any respect," Aizawa stated firmly. His eyes flashed red, and his hair slightly hovered before he settled back down. "And if you respectfully follow these rules, in turn, they shall grant you the same treatment. If any of them disrespects you, notify me immediately. I do not condone such behavior from anyone. They may be my students, but I don't pick favorites. I'll treat you just as I will them if you choose to stay," Aizawa continued. Midoriya nodded meekly, holding back a shiver from how stern Aizawa sounded. Why, yes, sir. You are also not permitted to wander anywhere in this building unless I give you direct permission. I would like you to assist me with paperwork when the time comes, so I don't want you getting the idea you can just run off. Filing and organizing documents is what you will be primarily tasked with to help me perform my work more efficiently. I've been meaning to find an assistant for a while now, but it took some time for Nizu to grant me permission to scout personally. So I hope I made the right choice, Aizawa stated, ensuring every word was understood. Izuku nodded to show he was listening and contained a sigh. Maybe he'd get lucky, and all Aizawa's paperwork would disappear before it had a chance to overwhelm him. Concerning your pay, you will earn $15 an hour. Your paycheck will be handed to you within 2-week intervals. Of course, we can adjust the schedule and payment method if that doesn't work conveniently for you. Oh no. That's more than enough, Aizawa, sir. Izuku reassured quickly, trying to wrap his head around everything. The fact that you are paying me this much is beyond what I was even expecting. So I have no complaints and am entirely grateful, he said, bowing after rapidly spilling out his words. No need to thank me, it's only fair. Now where was I? Oh yeah. You will work until I dismiss you, which can vary from anywhere between 2 to 4 p.m., with the exception of certain events or holidays. I've gone through all the terms, Aizawa finished and leaned forward to open a folder on the small table separating them. It held a contract that he turned to face Izuku. This is to verify that all the terms I have listed are indeed what will be required of you according to the contract. If you are still interested in what I am offering, I am willing to let you perform a 1-day shadowing of the work environment before you decide, so that way you wouldn't be shooting in the dark and I won't be wasting my time. Izuku reached out for the contract and skimmed over it quickly as a formality. Aizawa had indeed covered everything on the list, and Izuku found himself nodding in agreement. I might as well. So far, I'm a little unsure if I'd actually be a benefit to you. I've only had prior working experience once as a barista for about 2 months, so I don't have much to offer in the experience department, he admitted and set the contract back down. But that being said, I am interested and would like to see this interview through. However, aren't you also supposed to ask me questions about what kind of worker I am and what my intentions are if I were to accept this job? He asked, tilting his head. Izuku found himself in an unusual interview situation. He had expected the typical barrage of questions but was instead met with a different approach. Aizawa explained, normally, interviews are standard, but here, we conduct a thorough background check on everyone entering the building, especially potential staff. Izuku tensed up, but Aizawa reassured him, only the principal, Nizu, has access to that information. I don't see your personal history unless you or your guardians allow it. Nizu approved you, and with my own observations, I don't need a traditional interview. Actions speak louder than words. Izuku chuckled nervously, I guess that makes sense. Aizawa continued, since you're interested in job shadowing, I hope to see great things. You'll be released at 3 p.m. today with the students, and then you can decide. Any concerns? Izuku shook his head, smiling, I think I'm good. But wait, I have just dash. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud voice. Yo, Eraser! You in here? A tall man with blonde hair and a big grin entered. Aizawa sighed, while Izuku's excitement was evident. Who's the kid? The newcomer asked. Izuku Midoriya, the applicant I told you about, Aizawa replied. Oh, so he must be your new assistant, the man exclaimed. Not yet, he's only, Aizawa tried to clarify, but the man, present Mike, eagerly greeted Izuku, shaking his hand vigorously. Izuku was starstruck. It's an honor. Oh my god, it's such a pleasure to meet you too. Present Mike, surprised by Izuku's enthusiasm, said, Oh, I'm flattered, kid. You're probably just being polite. But Izuku insisted, and oh really? I'm serious. I've always dreamed of meeting you. I used to listen to your radio station as a kid. Your quirk and profession are so cool and extraordinary. Izuku rambled on about his admiration. Back in middle school, I did a project on your vocal cords and how they withstand your voice. It's amazing. Realizing he was rambling, he apologized. I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't creep you out. I'm just really interested in quirks and their science. Present Mike was momentarily speechless, looking to Aizawa for help, but Aizawa simply shrugged, sipping his coffee. Mike found Izuku's enthusiasm endearing and ruffled his hair with a grin. Seems you've got quite a fan, huh, Racer? Aizawa rolled his eyes, noticing Izuku's flushed cheeks. Knowing Hisashi, Aizawa expected him to talk about this for days. Izuku apologized, still a bit shaky. I've always been a big fan of heroes. Don't worry, kid. I appreciate the praise and love the energy. Glad to know I'm still relevant, Mike laughed. Sorry if I seemed surprised, I wasn't expecting anyone to recognize me. Not many did at the entrance exams, and that was a blow to the ego. It's nice to know I haven't been forgotten. Maybe it would have been better if they had, Aizawa teased. Mike gasped dramatically. How dare you? Did you forget how that one time you, yeah, get over yourself, Zashi, that was years ago, it was last week, irrelevant. Now, do you mind? We were in the middle of a conversation, Aizawa said, ignoring Mick's disbelief. Oh shoot, speaking of, I came to inform you that homeroom is waiting. Aizawa sighed. I would have been there if someone wasn't wasting my time. He glared at Mike, who was still grinning. Look alive, Midoriya, the Monday vibes are about to hit. He yawned, waving off Mike. Izuku bowed respectfully to Mike before following Aizawa out the door. See you around, kid. Don't let storm cloud over there get to you. Mike called after him. Izuku nodded, feeling a bit lighter. Aizawa and his coffee maker stood in front of the homeroom entrance, separated from the class by a large door marked 1A. The more Izuku thought about what lay beyond, the more nervous he became. Are you ready? Aizawa asked. Izuku was unresponsive, lost in thought. Aizawa sighed, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Midoriya, there's nothing to worry about. You'll fit right in with these troublemakers. They're not a bad class, despite my complaints. Izuku nodded, feeling slightly reassured. I know you don't have much experience and might avoid large crowds, but don't let that stop you from giving it your all. Aizawa's fatherly concern comforted Izuku, making him feel more at ease. Maybe this won't be so bad after all. The door slid open, and curious students turned their heads. Izuku scanned the room until his eyes locked with a pair of intense ruby-red ones, Katsuki Bakugos. Izuku froze, face to face with the person responsible for so much past torment. He thought he'd moved on, but in that moment he felt weak under Katsuki's gaze. Katsuki moved his feet from the desk, responding to Aizawa's look, but this small gesture made Izuku feel like he might be attacked. To his surprise and relief, Katsuki simply looked away, appearing bored. This attitude surprised Izuku, but he quickly recognized the familiar, "Don't come near me," aura. As Aizawa walked to his desk, waving Izuku to follow, Izuku's mind raced with embarrassment. What was he thinking? Of course, Katsuki wouldn't jump him. It had been years since they last interacted, and Katsuki might have changed. They wouldn't let just anyone into the hero course, and Izuku doubted Katsuki even recognized him. Izuku had certainly changed since his earlier days. As he stood beside Aizawa, he felt the weight of the class's curious gazes. Good morning, class, Aizawa greeted from behind his desk. The class responded in unison, Good morning, Mr. Aizawa, their eyes still fixed on Izuku. Before Aizawa could continue, hands shot up across the room. He sighed, deciding to address one question to move things along. Yes, Kirishima? Who is that guy? Is he a new classmate? Kirishima asked eagerly. Aizawa explained, This is Izuku Midoriya. He will be job shadowing for the teacher's assistant position I've requested. From now on, treat him with the utmost respect, as you would any other staff member here at U. The class nodded in understanding. Aizawa handed Izuku an empty coffee cup, prompting him to demonstrate his abilities. Izuku, relieved, performed a series of gestures, producing steaming hot coffee that filled the room with its rich aroma. He skillfully directed the coffee into the cup, cooling it to a drinkable temperature. The class was momentarily silent, then erupted with admiration. Dude, that was amazing. What a fascinating quirk. No wonder you're applying to be Sensei's assistant. Aizawa silenced the chatter with a stern look. I hope this answers any questions about why I chose to have some help with you all. He took a sip from the cup. As you can see, he is very talented. Most of the class couldn't deny this, though Bakugo seemed particularly unsettled. Aizawa noticed the lack of a desk for Izuku and sighed. Izuku, you can sit behind Bakugo for now. Raise your hand so he knows who you are. Katsuki responded with a dismissive gesture, making Aizawa roll his eyes. Izuku nodded and took his seat behind Bakugo, exchanging a friendly wave with Shiro as he passed. As Aizawa continued with the lesson, Izuku found himself engrossed, taking mental notes and assisting with coffee refills. He quickly adapted to Aizawa's routine, their teamwork seamless. Midoriya occasionally glanced at Bakugo, contemplating their past and the changes ahead. UA was everything he had hoped for and more, with everyone being surprisingly welcoming, including the school nurse, recovery girl. Izuku had always felt anxious about schools due to his childhood experiences, but this one felt like a dream straight out of a comic book. He even thought he might have gotten on Aizawa's good side, which was a relief. Providing Aizawa with coffee seemed to help, but they also worked well together, which was a promising start. Izuku couldn't stop smiling as he stood by Aizawa's side, finding the classes easier to handle once he got the hang of it. The activities, subjects, and life lessons were fascinating to observe, and the characters he met were admirable. He wished he had brought his notebook for autographs. Izuku was thrilled to learn that his favorite hero, All Might, was working part-time as a teacher at the school. Although he hadn't seen him yet, the news filled him with joy. During lunch, Aizawa introduced Izuku to the principal, Nizu. Izuku was nervous, but Nizu was welcoming and didn't mention anything about Izuku's past, which was a relief. Nizu enjoyed their conversation and suggested meeting again over tea, which made Izuku smile for the rest of the day. Later, Izuku sat in the teacher's lounge, waiting for Aizawa to finish his last class. Aizawa had suggested he think over the job offer, and Izuku was grateful for the time to reflect. Despite the perfect day, he felt unsure about taking the job, feeling like a small pebble among future heroes. He was expected to assist or hold authority over them, which felt daunting. As he pondered, Aizawa entered the room, breaking his concentration. "Are you alright, kid? I've been calling your name for 2 minutes, Aizawa said. Sorry, sir, I didn't realize. Izuku replied. Aizawa sat beside him, noticing Izuku's anxious behavior. After a moment of silence, Izuku took a deep breath. I still can't believe I'm actually here, he whispered. Yesterday, I was just giving out coffee in the park, and now you're offering a job that could change my whole life. Aizawa understood the weight of the decision. Working at UA, one of the top hero schools in Japan, involved risks, even as a teacher's assistant. It was a life-changing opportunity, and Izuku needed to decide if he was ready for it. Aizawa felt a strong sense of responsibility to protect those he mentored, never forcing anyone into situations they didn't choose. He believed in potential, and he saw something special in Izuku that he hadn't seen in a long time. Aizawa wanted to nurture this potential, as even Izuku seemed unaware of his future possibilities. After some thought, Aizawa retrieved a stack of old business cards from his locker. He handed one to Izuku, explaining, "That's my business number. I know this is a tough decision, and I didn't expect an immediate answer. Take it home, think it over, and call me before the end of the week." Izuku nodded, grateful but concerned about causing trouble. Aizawa reassured him, "Kid, you're not a problem. I'd be pleased if you'd consider working with me. I enjoy your company and am interested in seeing where this partnership goes. Take care, Midoriya." Izuku stood in the room, reflecting on Aizawa's words, before leaving with his belongings. As he walked through the hallways, he felt a sense of belonging. "But that'd be dumb," he muttered, dismissing the thought. Suddenly, he was shoved into a vacant classroom and pinned to the wall. He opened his eyes to see Bakugo's intense glare. "Kaken?" Izuku stammered. Bakugo, with a harsh tone, told him not to act like they were still close. Izuku flinched at the familiar name, which still stung. Bakugo expressed disbelief at seeing Izuku at the school, his anger palpable. Despite the fear and memories of past bullying, Izuku realized he had grown. He refused to let Bakugo dictate his life anymore, determined to stand up for himself. You think you can waltz into MY school and act like you own the place? And with my teacher of all people? Katsuki growled. What did you even do to get my teacher to accept your application? Beg and throw away your dignity? Perhaps you tried to bribe him? He would have continued, but Izuku's yell silenced him quickly in shock. This isn't like how things were before, Kaken. I've changed. Moved on. And I think it's about time you do too. I'm only here because your teacher found me to be a valid candidate for the position. I was offered a job by a pro hero, and I'm not turning that down. I may be the sorry waste of space you claim I am, but I was given this opportunity for a reason, and I'd be dead if I let it go without giving it my all. This is my life and mine alone. And I'm not going to let you control every single action I take anymore. Izuku fired his pent-up feelings with a newfound passion. Now for once in your life, let me go. He demanded with one final push. Izuku, fighting tears, ran out of the classroom, leaving a stunned and startled Katsuki behind. Katsuki stood in silence as the speech registered in his head. A frown settled on his features and he groaned, letting his back hit the wall. So after all these years, Izuku finally decided to stand up for himself, huh? His voice quickly died off, and he shouldered his backpack with a grumble. Well, it's not like I care. The nonsense he sprouted was probably something he just made up. Even though he told himself this, Katsuki couldn't get over the fact that the person he labeled useless all those years ago managed to stand up to him. And that was a thought that would certainly keep him awake at night. This is Shota Aizawa speaking. How may I help you? It's Izuku Midoriya, sir. Calling so soon? Well, that's a lot faster than I anticipated. I've had a sudden realization that was my deciding factor in all of this. Is that so? Well, if you're sure. Then what have you decided, Midoriya? When do I start? Izuku released a small sigh as he lowered his now shut-off phone and pocketed it in his bag. After talking to Aizawa about accepting the offer, he could feel the adrenaline that was previously pumping through his veins begin to dissipate. That confrontation with Bakugo had riled him up and caused him to act rashly. He just ended up calling Aizawa in the heat of the moment. Izuku had barely stumbled out of the school gates before dialing the number on the business card. He wasn't thinking clearly and could guarantee that his voice probably shook a few times from holding back tears. However, Izuku finds that he probably would have accepted the job anyway. So it's not as if it was necessarily a bad thing. Aizawa must have known what he was doing, letting him feel out the atmosphere and environment before simply moving him into an unfamiliar place. In hindsight, it actually makes sense. Aizawa seemed like the reserved type of person who also dislikes being uncomfortable and unwelcome. It's one of the reasons why he refuses to make appearances on media or talk shows if he has the choice. But even so, Izuku couldn't help but walk along the sidewalk with a distraught look on his face, keeping his head. His hand gripped the backpack strap tightly enough to turn his knuckles white as his mind drifted back to his old friend. His steps grew heavier as regret and guilt started to cloud his mind. Izuku hated the fact that he blew up at Katsuki like he did. It's not like him to lose his temper or snap at somebody. Don't get him wrong, he didn't regret a single thing he said. He'd been keeping all those feelings pent up for years and would be lying if he didn't state that a weight had been lifted from his chest. But that relief alone doesn't make Izuku proud of how he acted. It was harsh of him, and he himself hates yelling in general, let alone being yelled at. Not to mention yelling at Katsuki Bakugo, which will probably result in him facing consequences later. However, that was a problem for future Izuku. Right now, he was just going to go home and make a nice cup of coffee to counterbalance all the tea he drank earlier that day from being introduced to Nizu. Izuku had experienced drinking quite a lot before, but even he couldn't deny his screeching bladder after a visit with the furry white animal. Truth be told, he did drink a lot of coffee beforehand, so he'd have to make a mental note the next time he visited the mouse-bear hybrid for their tea date. Hey Ida, let me show you that one move I was talking to you about earlier. The one that Mina taught me, it's like a running leap or something like that. Uraraka, I advise you to watch your step and slow down. Look where you are going before you hurt yourself. Don't worry, I can take care of my stash. At that moment, the bubbly girl broke Izuku's mental ramblings as she stumbled into him. He had just enough time to turn around slightly before he was met with someone hurtling towards him, limbs flying and all. Without hesitation, he clumsily caught the girl in an attempt to keep both of them from hitting the hard ground. He, however, still ungracefully stumbled from the impact and let out an embarrassingly timed startled yelp as he tried to stabilize them. "Are you all right?" the short brown-haired girl questioned after a few seconds of silence. Izuku, who was caught off guard during the whole thing, finally met his eyes to her warm brown ones that were filled with worry. "Shouldn't I be asking you that?" "I'm perfectly fine," he stuttered in confusion and slight concern. "Well, that's a relief," she chuckled airily. "I'm sorry about running into you. And thank you for catching me," she smiled gleefully, highlighting her softly coated pink cheeks. "I was so startled I didn't even think about using my quirk." "It's no problem at all, I'm just glad you're not hurt." "Uraraka!" Ida's loud shout rang in their ears as he approached closer, running as if something urgent was chasing him. Once he quickly arrived at the pair, not even winded, he began to examine both of them for any injuries or scratches they may have acquired in the stumble. "Are you hurt?" he asked with concern. Uraraka shook her head sheepishly. Ida, in turn, gave a loud sigh of disappointment directed at Uraraka. "You need to be more careful, Uraraka. You could have injured yourself. I know that recovery girl is just a turn back to the building, but that is no excuse to act recklessly," he chastised. I know. Next time I'll pay more attention to where I'm going. The whole reason I'm not hurt is thanks to." The brunette looked up at her savior with a smile, but her voice died in the back of her throat once she realized that she was clutching onto Izuku's sweater. She immediately scrambled out of his arms with an embarrassed face, confusing the two. She then began to try and smooth out the very noticeable wrinkles she made on Izuku's sweater. Sorry. I hope I didn't stretch it out too much. This looks so expensive," she practically cried out in a panic when the sweater still stuck out slightly from where she had previously gripped it. Izuku just stared at her curiously and pulled out his sweater a bit so he could examine the problem. "Oh, well, that's fine, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it," he reassured with a dismissive wave, unsure as to why she was panicking so much. In the midst of Uraraka's act of bowing repeatedly in apology, Ida's eyes widened in realization. "Wait, you're that person Mr. Aizawa brought into the classroom earlier today. Izuku Midoriya, if I remember correctly," he stated. "What? Really? I'm so sorry. If Sensei found out, he'd be disappointed in me for being so oblivious." Uraraka cried out in shame, muttering that last comment to herself. "It must have slipped my mind. It's been such a long day. And on top of that, I even messed up your clothes." She sighed and dug out a wallet from her backpack. I don't have much on me, but if it helps, you can take what I have." She hesitantly held out a few bills for the curly-haired boy to take. His face was shrouded in horror. Izuku hated making people feel as if they owed him anything. No, it's really okay. You can hardly even see it. Honestly, don't worry about the sweater. I have a whole closet of them at home," Izuku explained and refused to grab the cash. "It's all I wear and this one's kinda old. I'm not mad, and it was just an accident anyways," he said in an attempt to calm her down. "Please don't waste your money on me." "Why, you mean it?" "Of course. I like my clothes baggy anyhow." Uraraka sighed in relief and pocketed her money while Ida patted her shoulder. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck and smiled shakily, relieved that she finally backed down. He was still getting used to all of this attention, even though it had been happening constantly throughout the day. He'd had more social interaction within this 24 hours than he'd had in a long time. "Back to what you were saying earlier," Izuku brought up, and Ida perked his head. "Yes. And as of just a few minutes ago, I'm the new hire," he admitted and flushed slightly at the small cheer Uraraka gave, followed by Ida's delighted expression. I actually just confirmed everything with Aizawa. But there really is no need for all of the formalities, I'm just a regular guy." "As much as I am enlightened to hear that you are to be filling the position, how dare you speak of yourself in such a nonsensical manner?" Ida demanded, promptly shaking Izuku to his core with his tone of conviction. Don't you realize your outstanding privilege? You are being permitted to step foot on UA's campus and view their teachings, mannerisms, and even daily life that's hidden from the public as an act of privacy. Izuku was now regarded as part of the UA staff, a rare honor given his age. Normally, one would need to pass an entrance exam just to see a classroom run by professionals. Ida explained, "Well, of course, I know how lucky I am. I'm honored that Mr. Aizawa would take an interest in me. Then stop labeling yourself as the equivalent of a garbage can when clearly you aren't. If you were, I doubt Mr. Aizawa would have gone through so much trouble to get you into UA," Ida stated, adjusting his glasses. "He's very precise with his preferences and has noticeably been working hard to get some help. Being a teacher is no simple feat. I may be class rep, but I certainly have no business with paperwork or closed-door decisions when it comes to Mr. Aizawa as a teacher. And regretfully, there is little I can do to ease his stressful workload." "Yeah, it's just what Ida said. And I'm certain Mr. Aizawa wouldn't do that for just anybody. Actually, I think you are the only one. Outside of our class, he's been this insistent on teaching and mentoring," Ochako pointed out, her finger on her cheek in thought. Izuku's green eyes gleamed, and a small flush covered his cheeks. Despite the whisper-shouting match in front of him, their words really touched him. He looked to the side, unsure how to reply. He felt warmth and happiness swell in his chest before an overwhelming thought interrupted. He faced a moment of awkward silence when the two gazes finally settled on him. He started fumbling with his sweater sleeve, a habit when he needed to ground himself and form a cohesive thought. "Oh, thank you for that, Ida, right?" Tenya Ida," he said. Izuku nodded as his first name came to mind. "Oh yeah, I remember now." He brightened up. "Sorry, I've seen so many faces and learned so many names today that yours kinda slipped my mind." He chuckled sheepishly. "And your Ochako? Uraraka?" he asked, pointing to the brunette who nodded in confirmation. "Seems I'm not the only one who is tired," she playfully suggested, sticking her tongue out at Tenya, who returned the gesture in challenge. The two seemed awfully close, considering Ochako managed to break the bulky teen out of his formal mannerisms from time to time. "You're not wrong, it's been a long day." Midoriya smiled and let a giggle slip, a gesture the others couldn't help but find utterly adorable. "For you guys especially, I bet learning at UA can be rather tiring." They both nodded, unable to deny the smiles on their faces as they exchanged a few more comments. Something about Izuku was just welcoming. They couldn't exactly describe it. Maybe it was the natural smell of coffee beans he emitted or his soft, freckled face that always wore a tentative smile that later broke into a full beam of sunshine. If you asked them, they couldn't tell you. It was just something that made him so approachable. "Now that we have all of this taken care of, I suppose we should be off soon." Izuku nodded at Ida's definitive words. They were about to go their separate ways when Izuku's bag began to vibrate. Shortly after, a loud blaring noise came from his phone. Ochako and Tenya's phones also began shrieking with alarms, along with any device in the vicinity. Izuku's eyebrows furrowed in confusion as he dug around for his device. When he grabbed hold of it, he pulled it out to see a big text bubble on his notifications. "Severe thunderstorms in this area until 9 p.m. Please take cover." Only now did the group of three finally raise their heads to notice the dark clouds accumulating above them. A loud yet distant crack of thunder could be heard as the clouds tried their best to contain the lightning. Ida and Uraraka looked at one another nervously. Neither lived close enough to the school to avoid getting caught in the storm, and with the sudden pickup of wind, it was certain to be a rough one. Ida lightly scolded himself for not checking the weather that morning, but from what he knew, there wasn't supposed to be a storm at all this week. Unless the storm changed its trajectory. Weather was so unpredictable nowadays, even with advancing technology. Mother Nature just did her own thing. Izuku noticed the exchange of nervous and concerned looks. Without much prompting, he caved into his good nature and spoke up. "I live a little under 10 minutes from here if we run. You two could wait out the storm at my place." He offered, side-eyeing the clouds that overtook the sun, shrouding them in a dull gray glow. That's really kind of you, but… Ochako gave Tenya a pleading look with her hands clasped, giving him the Ochako stare. She wasn't one for storms, having once experienced a tree smashing onto her parents' bedroom when she was a child. Fortunately, they were all up late watching movies that day, so no one was injured. But it still frightened her to think her parents could have been harmed in their sleep. Normally, Ida would politely decline and wait out the storm in a store. However, knowing Ochako's concerns, he agreed with a sigh. More company tended to ease her nerves, and he couldn't deny wanting to protect his friend. I guess if you have enough room to accompany us then, he started. Hooray! Ochako cheered, hugging the big lug beside her. Let's get a move on then. The Midoriya's front door flew open with a crash as 3 soaked teens stumbled in, another loud clash of the storm screeching behind them. The last one hastily slammed the door shut to keep the rain out. Izuku peered out the window, seeing the outside overthrown with darkness, something that happened quickly. As they made their way to the house, the rain poured heavily, drenching them from head to toe. Thankfully, their phones were safe in a Ziploc bag Ochako had in her backpack, thanks to Ida's suggestion. A small woman poked her head out of the kitchen in surprise. Honey, you didn't tell me you were bringing guests, she squeaked. Sorry, Mom. I would have if the storm hadn't crept up on us. We got the alert as soon as school let out, and they needed a place to ride it out, Izuku explained apologetically as she walked over with 3 towels. Oh well, if that's the case, don't worry dears, you're both entirely welcome, she greeted, noticing the dripping wet teens. That storm was unexpected. I'm just glad I didn't have to go into work today, she sighed in relief and turned to her son. Izuku, do you mind taking these 2 upstairs to find some clothes? I believe I have some spares that will fit this appealing young lady and the handsome gentleman right there. While you all get changed into something comfortable, I'll make some tea, she giggled, throwing a towel over Uraraka's head and gently drying her off. We wouldn't want you to catch a cold now, would we? Inko smiled at the surprised teen, who flushed with embarrassment. She soon gave the same treatment to Ida, who bowed slightly for the short woman, also not spared from the motherly care. Ochako and Ida shared pink-tinted faces from the slightly embarrassing antics, but it was a heartwarming gesture. Will do, Mom. Izuku smiled as she gave him a sly kiss on the cheek, promptly embarrassing him. Before he could complain, she threw a towel over his eyes and walked back to the kitchen with a giggle. He pouted lightly but allowed a cheeky smile to grace his lips. He really loved his mom from the bottom of his heart. She always knew how to keep him smiling. With one last glance in her direction, he waved to his guests to draw their attention. Follow me, you two, Izuku stated, grabbing their hands after they shrugged off their shoes, and led them to his mother's room upstairs. Izuku much preferred this spacious house compared to the small apartment he and his mother lived in during his childhood. It was a shock to him that they found such a nice, roomy house, especially when money was tight. But it made him appreciate his mother's conviction even more. She never failed to impress him. The 2 students couldn't resist admiring how nice and tidy the 2-story house was. Although it was a bit small for Ida, it had a soft and welcoming feel. The small exchange between mother and son only reinforced that comforting atmosphere. Uraraka and Ida were led to a door after climbing the stairs, and before continuing, Izuku turned to stop them. Wait here, I'll be out in just a second. I'm pretty sure I remember where she put all the extra clothes, he said with a small murmur before slipping inside. Uraraka nodded as he disappeared behind the door, letting her curious gaze wander the hall as she waited. A bright sign at the end of the hallway caught her attention after another crash of thunder made her jolt. Composing herself and trying not to focus on the storm outside, she tilted her head in confusion at why it was haphazardly sprawled on the floor. She guessed it probably fell off the wall or a door. Uraraka walked over and crouched to observe it. She noticed that the door it lay in front of was slightly ajar and seemed to be missing a sign. She shrugged, concluding it probably belonged to the room, and gently picked it up. The pink-cheeked girl looked at the shiny All Might-themed sign and was surprised to find it read, Aizu, across the front. She didn't think such a nice thing should stay on the ground but observed that the hook it was hanging on had also fallen off in its tumble, along with a few letters that belonged to the sign. What are you doing? Ida asked, causing Uraraka to whirl around and accidentally hit him in the gut. He let out a startled groan and hunched over while Ochako shrieked an apology. "Oh no, Ida. I'm so sorry. You scared me, and I'm just jumpy with this storm raging outside and—" "It's fine," he wheezed slightly, using the wall to brace himself. "Goodness, you're strong," he coughed and straightened up with a wince. She scratched her cheek with another apologetic smile in response. Another boom of thunder made her yelp and groan in annoyance. Ida softly chuckled and patted her back reassuringly. "Don't worry, Ochako, the worst of the storm is sure to pass by any minute now. After this, it should just mainly be rain." She took in a shaky breath and nodded at his words. Yeah. "You're probably right, I'm just being unreasonable. Nothing wrong with being a little jumpy. It keeps you alert, something we need to get used to if we want to become pro-heroes," he said in his usual formal tone. She gently nudged his shoulder with her own to playfully chide him for speaking so formally. But the words still offered comfort, something she was always thankful for and appreciated. "Anyway, what are you doing with that sign?" he questioned, pointing at the plaque she held. "Oh, I think this is Izuku's," she explained and turned it around to show Ida. "It probably goes to this door." "That's what I was thinking, but it was on the ground and a few pieces of it flew off," she stated, holding up the two letters she had also picked up, a K and a U. "I should go set it somewhere safe in his room. That way it's not just laying out here. It really looks like he spent a lot of time on it. I'd hate for it to get stepped on." I would say the sign looks homemade. Incredible attention to detail surely deserves to be preserved by any means. But wouldn't entering be considered a breach of privacy? I do not think it would be acceptable to just walk in. "True. But I promise I'll be super quick." "Okay, just don't touch anything." "You got it, class rep," the girl nodded, slowly opening the door. However, the moment she stepped into the room and turned on the light, she was at a loss for words. The storm and situation completely forgotten as she stared at the room filled with pro-hero memorabilia at every turn. It was primarily All Might merchandise, as you would expect from the average person. Everyone had All Might merch. But this? This was on an entirely different level. "This is outstanding," Uraraka whispered in awe and immediately backtracked out of the room. "Ida," she whispered to grab his attention. "Did you put up the sign?" "Don't worry about that right now, Ida. You have got to take a look at this," she exclaimed and pulled the boy into the room by his arm. "This is inappropriate behavior, Uraraka. Whatever it is you found, we should pretend as if we never saw it or—" "Oh, it's amazing, right?" She giggled and contained a squeal. "It sure does take commitment, I'll say that," Ida breathed out in bewilderment as he looked around the room in amazement. He spotted a rare and exclusive All Might figurine that he himself remembered was extremely difficult to acquire. He recalled staying up late with Tensei when he was around 10 years old, trying to guess the special code to win such a prize. Sadly, they both nodded off around 2 in the morning, and the code had already been guessed by someone else. How did he even manage to collect all of this? The brunette shrugged before she walked over to his desk and placed the sign down carefully. While doing so, in her peripherals, Ochako noticed a stack of notebooks neatly organized on the edge of his desk. Many were books for schooling purposes, and she was surprised to see that all of it was rather advanced stuff. If she had to guess, most of the books he had were for third-year level studies. But right beside them, there was a pile of notebooks that didn't look scholarly in nature, and that was what caught her eye. Out of curiosity, the girl picked one up. She knew she shouldn't, but it was hard to contain her inquisitive actions. But on second thought, if it were her room, she wouldn't appreciate strangers looking at her stuff and sadly sighed after a debate in her mind. Darn, I really want to ask him about all of this fantastic stuff, but we should probably leave. I don't want to snoop around without his permission. Yeah, it would be rather unfitting, and he's already shown us a vast amount of kindness. But I really must admit that this room is a marvel to behold. Really? You think so? The two turned around to find Izuku standing in the doorway, wearing an All Might hoodie and holding 2 piles of clothes. Uraraka hastily clutched the book in a panic. It's not what it looks like? We weren't looking. She looked down at her hands, which held the notebook, and quickly put it down. I mean dash. Midoriya let out a small giggle, which perplexed the two. Wouldn't he be at least a little upset that they were in his room? Snooping through his stuff even? Well, they hadn't technically gone through with it, but from an outsider's point of view, they might as well have. We're deeply apologetic for entering your room without permission. Ida decided to take the lead in apologizing anyway. Uraraka found a door sign on the ground and wanted to ensure it wouldn't be damaged further, he explained, gesturing to the object on the desk. Izuku's expression shifted to understanding. Initially nervous to find them in his room, his concerns faded after hearing their conversation. I know you two didn't mean any harm. Relax. Besides, I could hear you both admiring my decor down the hall. Uraraka shook her head, fighting down an embarrassed blush. She tended to get carried away. It still wasn't right. It won't happen again. I promise. I just couldn't help but notice all your books and stuff. I had no idea you studied third-year level subjects, she exclaimed, unable to contain her surprise. Or how amazing your collection is. I could never dream to own as much as you do. Izuku smiled nervously. It's not all that much. I just make my own merch sometimes as a personal project and get gifts for my birthday, Christmas, and such. You know how it is, he giggled, meeting her eyes. And about the books, if you must know, I actually am a third year. Oh, that's... Wait, what? She looked at Izuku incredulously, her mouth falling open when he nodded to confirm. Ida made a small hum of agreement. I figured as much. I noticed you must have been close to graduation, considering you accepted a job requiring at least 8 hours of your time. Throughout the day. Wait a minute, Ida. You knew. She whipped her head back to Izuku, astonished. Then you've got to be a certified genius. No way have I ever heard of someone graduating that fast. I'm just a quick learner, he explained, shaking his head shyly, finally handing off the clothing piles he held. Truth be told, most of my energy goes into being a fanboy. I love taking notes on heroes and analyzing their quirks. The more knowledge I have, the easier it is to understand their powers. Plus, I've always wanted to help my mom out as much as I can, so the faster I graduate, the more time I can devote to easing her burdens. It was true. Inko always did so much for Izuku and the house. He often had to remind her to take it easy. Izuku walked over to his desk, picked up the book Ochako was holding, and handed it to them. Read it if you'd like, he encouraged, a little worried his notes might be indecipherable. Sorry if the handwriting is messy, I usually take notes in these small books when I'm on the go or observing heroes in action. He gestured to the pile of notebooks, some old and some recent. I often rewrite them when I have time so they're not too messy, he chuckled. My hand can't keep up with my brain half the time, so it results in sloppy writing. Ochako nodded, still processing the information from how fast Izuku talked. She decided to take his offer and satisfy her curiosity. Hero analysis for the future? She read, surprised. Notebook number 9? Ida peeked over her shoulder to read the book she eagerly opened, suitably impressed. You are very observant, aren't you? Ida commented as he turned the page. Izuku only shrugged. If you want to call it that, then. No, really, it seems you've made countless notes on numerous pros, some I don't even recognize. Details about their strengths, weaknesses. He squinted slightly. Even some brilliant ideas for enhancements to conserve energy and increase efficiency in lengthy battles. Outstanding, I never would have thought of this. Granted, a few of your suggestions are a stretch, but this truly is remarkable, Midoriya. Thank you. You're too kind, really. I just jot down what I think would be practical, though I do tend to get a bit wrapped up in my head, Izuku giggled. But it's my favorite hobby nonetheless. He beamed as they closed the book and handed it back after looking at a few more entries. A delighted expression left him feeling as if he were on cloud 9. No one's ever taken such interest in his hobbies before, apart from Inko. It made him feel appreciated, knowing his hard work wasn't a waste of time. Anyway, if both of you are ready to change, there's a bathroom past that door, he directed, pointing down the hallway. And there's another one downstairs that one of you can use. I'm sure you're both eager to get out of those cold clothes. Ida couldn't help but agree and glanced at Uraraka, deciding it was best to get started before one of them caught a chill. Uraraka, which one are you going to select? I guess I'll go downstairs, she shrugged with indifference. Just so you don't have to walk around with those wet breathes rubbing together uncomfortably. Ida winced and nodded in confirmation. I appreciate the kind offer, Uraraka. All right, then it's decided. I'll take the one up here and we'll rendezvous in the living room. Ochako gave a playful salute. Aye, Captain. Don't take long, or I'll manage to crash the boat somehow, she called, retreating downstairs with a giggle. Ida shook his head and walked out of the room, with Izuku following behind and shutting the door. It's the one to your left, Izuku informed, pointing to a door just to the left of the staircase. Thank you for all of this, Ida said, looking down at the smaller boy. You didn't need to help us out nearly as much as you have. Izuku shook his head. Of course I did. You're my guests and I'd feel awful if I treated you both with anything less, he smiled earnestly. I'll meet you downstairs. Let me know if you need anything else, okay? Tenya nodded and watched as the bubbly boy disappeared downstairs. What a pure soul he was indeed. Ida walked out of the bathroom in a white t-shirt and knee-high black basketball shorts. Surprisingly, the clothes fit well for his build. He was slightly concerned that his bulky figure might rip the clothes he was given, but it seemed Izuku was considerate and gave him a shirt that fit just right. He trotted down the stairs and into the living room, where everyone was patiently waiting for him. Uraraka was already comfortably seated, wearing a light pink sweater and gray sweatpants. She had her legs folded in front of her, holding a steaming cup of tea. She casually engaged in conversation with the older green-haired woman across from her, giggling and lightly snorting. Ida gingerly took a seat on a cushion beside Uraraka. As soon as he sat down, Izuku effortlessly offered him a teacup, which Ida accepted gratefully. The small wooden table in the middle of the group held a plate of dumplings and rice ball, prepared by Inko for their enjoyment. Wow, Izuku, I had no idea you were such a mama's boy, Uraraka teased, making Izuku flush and stutter in defense. Well, is it such a crime that my darling Izuku just can't get enough of me? Inko asked with a smug face, taking a sip of her tea and catching her son's flustered reaction. What, you too, Mom? Whose side are you on? Izuku protested. The winning side, the women said in unison, giving each other a small fist bump, causing Midoriya to pout and prompting another round of laughter. You two seem to be getting along well, Ida observed with a playful chuckle. Ms. Midoriya is the best, Ochako declared with a bright grin. And I love her clothes, they are so comfortable and warm. She had long forgotten about the thunderstorm outside and was enjoying herself to the fullest. Ida smiled in response, glad that his friend no longer felt distressed about their earlier situation. Inko lowered her teacup and smiled with a small, relaxed sigh. I'm pleased that they fit you. I haven't worn those old things in ages, Inko admitted, swirling her teacup. And thanks, dear. I find you to be a rather fine young lady, she winked, and Ochako giggled lightly. Anyone who can keep up with my sense of fun is lovely in my book. Not when your sense of fun is picking on me, Izuku protested. Oh, tomato, having fun chatting, teasing my son. There really isn't a difference, Inko replied. I'm so tired, Izuku groaned to himself as he trudged along the path to you. I didn't even realize what time it was before I turned in for the day, but it feels like I only slept for 5 minutes, he mumbled, taking occasional sips of coffee. Washing and drying Uraraka and Ida's belongings took longer than I thought it would last night, he thought, glancing at the bags full of laundry and sighing in exhaustion. Well, I did offer, so it's not like I can complain. He had both of their school bags slung over his shoulders, and the bags were probably the biggest challenge to dry. Not to mention, he had to leave early to ensure they received their stuff in time for classes. As Izuku approached the UA gates, he noticed some movement from the nearby trees and stopped in his tracks. What was? His green eyes locked on the area for a few long seconds before he shook his head. Probably nothing. Must be the lack of sleep making me paranoid, he shrugged to himself and continued to the gates. Almost immediately, After entering the school grounds, he spotted a familiar teacher. His hand darted into his bag, and he pulled out a cup, quickly slapping on a lid. He sped up to the teacher, who was walking at a slow pace. Aizawa heard his name being called and saw his assistant stumbling towards him with all sorts of things on his person. Aizawa lifted a brow. "How many people took advantage of you today? Or are you an errand boy now?" he asked with his usual uninterested expression. "Oh, no, it's just Uraraka's and Ida's school stuff," Izuku explained. Before Aizawa could ask more questions about why he had his students' school bags, Izuku cut him off. "Coffee?" he offered, holding out the cup Aizawa had come to love. Aizawa didn't hesitate to grab and drink it, letting out a sigh in the process. "Sorry, Mr. Aizawa, but I need to head in. I'll see you at homeroom." Izuku bowed before rushing off as best he could with the added weight. The teacher just stared in slight confusion at the boy before heading that way himself. "Wonder what's got him in a rush," he mumbled to himself. "Whatever. At least he isn't running late." He sipped his coffee with another lazy shrug. The classroom door slid open, and a few heads turned to greet the smiling green-haired boy. "Good morning," he waved. "Good morning," some of the class greeted. More than half of the class was there, which actually surprised Izuku. Most were huddled in their own groups or keeping to themselves. "Aizu-chan." Midoriya's head turned in confusion to Uraraka. He gave a smile in greeting and walked over. She was sitting with Tenya and a girl with long green hair. "Greetings, Uraraka, Ida," and the greenette frowned and closed his eyes in concentration. "Don't tell me." "Azui. Tsuyu Azui," he pointed. The girl looked at him before letting out an adorable giggle. "You caught me, Ribbit. You are correct, but you can call me Tsu," she smiled. "And you are Izuku Midoriya. I would have introduced myself properly yesterday, but you were swarmed," she chuckled as he nodded. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ribbit." "Likewise," he replied. "Are those our bags?" Ida asked, pointing to the small boy's back. "Thanks." He nodded, set down his belongings, and shrugged the bags off his shoulders. He handed each bag to the respective owner. "If you want, you can check. Everything is in there. Dry and ready to use." "Dry? Does that mean you two got caught up in the storm yesterday?" Tsu asked. "Yes, Midoriya was kind enough to let us take refuge in his house." Ida piped up. "He and his mother showed us great hospitality." Izuku had a slight blush on his face. "It was the least I could do, after all. I want to be friends," he said shyly. "Silly Aizu." Uraraka sked. "We are friends. Didn't we confirm this the other day?" "Yeah, but..." "No buts. It is final, we don't go back on our word. As heroes, it's the least we can do," she stated proudly. Ida coughed. "Heroes in training." "Same difference." She stuck out her tongue. "No, it isn't," he stated, waving his arms around like a robot. "You falsely classify us as just the thing." "Don't be so literal. I was only playing," she laughed. Ida sighed in defeat and went on to lecture Uraraka anyway. "Sorry about them," Frog Girl's sweat dropped. "Not at all," he chuckled. "Hey, Tsu!" A voice called. All of them turned around. "Kaminari? Ribbit?" She tilted her head. "Do you need something?" she asked, her head propped in front of her. "Yeah, Mina wants to talk to you about something." "Beyond." "Yo, is that Midoriya?" Tsuyu nodded and waved off the group before walking off. "How did you not notice him entering the classroom?" Tenya shouted. "I just woke up. Siro told me I had to show up early for a small bet I lost." He stretched with a grunt. "He called me at 5 in the morning non-stop until I picked up. What a jerke." He pouted. Izuku gave a small laugh before turning his attention to a small bag. "Oh yeah, here are the uniforms you guys left at my house. I hope you don't mind the more floral scents. That's all my mom seems to buy nowadays." He apologized, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't mind," Ochako smiled. "That's not a problem at all, thank you, Midoriya," Ida said gratefully. He saluted in response. "My pleasure." Out of the blue, Kaminari wrapped his arm around Izuku's neck and pulled him down after turning their backs to the others. "Hey man, did you hang out with Ochako?" he asked with a grin on his face. That's pretty impressive for a small guy like you. Hearing this made Izuku's cheeks flush as he pushed away frantically, his face growing redder by the minute. What? No. Then you hung out with Ida? That's even crazier. I like it. No. Ooh, all three of you then. A little surprising for a reserved guy like you, but I can see it. Denki smirked and gave him a wink. Don't worry, your secrets are safe with me. At this point, you could guarantee that Izuku was as red as a tomato. It's not like that, he stuttered. I swear. And oh, hanging out like that was involved, he shouted a little louder than he would have liked. A few heads turned in pure confusion while Kaminari laughed heartily. Ochako tried to hold it in but failed miserably. Midoriya. I never expected such language to come from you of all people, Ida gasped. I would ask that you refrain from speaking of such matters on campus. No. You got it all wrong. I swear he. The room was interrupted by a loud noise as the door was slammed open. Izuku averted his eyes once he saw who it was. Bakugo. He could feel the intense glare on his body, as if he was being scrutinized from just that. Izuku kept looking down until he decided it was okay to look up. He wasn't expecting Bakugo to be directly in front of him. His intense gaze bore down on Izuku, making him feel small and insignificant. Despite this, Izuku managed to speak. Good morning. Kaken. I knew this encounter was bound to happen sooner or later. Unintentionally, my hands began to fidget with the end of my sweater, a habit I've always had alongside mumbling, as I tried to gather the courage to talk to the guy who seemed ready to confront me. Slowly, I lifted my head to meet the eyes of my childhood friend and spoke with all the confidence I could muster. Good morning, Kaken. I quickly looked back at the floor, my hands now clenched at my sides, bracing for whatever might come next. A few seconds of silence passed before he scoffed and shoved me aside. Move it, extra. I stumbled back into a desk, surprised. Huh. I stared at him in confusion as he walked to his desk. He didn't follow through? I wondered, not believing what I was seeing. I was so rude to him yesterday. I'm honestly surprised he didn't retaliate when he had the chance. Bakugo. It's impolite to shove people, especially the newcomer. I think you owe him an apology. Impolite my butt. He's the one who didn't move, the blonde retorted while plopping down into his seat. I felt a hand on my shoulder, which made me jump a bit. I'm really sorry about him. Are you okay? I turned my head to meet Kirishima's concerned expression. Oh, yes, I'm okay, I reassured him and straightened myself up, forcing a smile. See? It was nothing. Truth was, I felt very stressed. If Bakugo didn't confront me then, does that mean he will later? What if he's planning something? Kirishima examined me for a split second before nodding with a sigh. If you say so. At least that's good. For a second, I really thought he was going to punch you. I chuckled nervously. You're not the only one. The redhead smiled and placed his arms behind his head. Not a bad way to start off the morning, yeah? He spoke sarcastically, making me laugh. Kirishima didn't seem like a bad guy. In truth, he was actually really nice to talk to. We continued to chat for a while when he asked me a question. So why does Bakugo seem to have it out for you? The mention of that made me shift uncomfortably, and Kirishima noticed the change. If you don't want to tell me, then you don't have to. No, it's completely all right. It's just been a while since I've brought it up, I spoke softly. We were actually childhood friends once. But we kind of drifted apart a year or so before middle school. Ooh, that explains it. Now it was my turn to act curious. What do you mean? The classroom door slid open, and when I laid eyes on the figure, I felt a jolt of surprise. Mr. Aizawa? I stuttered. Why is my boss in A? Is that a sleeping bag? My voice shook from the shock. A chorus of yes rang from the indifferent class, which baffled me. This was a recurring event. My boss simply began waddling over to the podium while I stood there, jaw dropped. Midoriya? Bro, are you good? You look like you've seen a ghost. I am okay. I snapped out of it. I don't understand. None of us do, it's just how sensei is, Ijiro shrugged. Ida began to advise everyone to take their seats, and I obliged. After maneuvering around desks to reach mine, I focused my attention on the front of the classroom and took out a notebook and pencil. Just because I can't become a hero myself doesn't mean I can't take notes. This is valuable information. Not to mention, I haven't been in a school environment like this for a while. As if on cue, the infamous finger lifted as the hero emerged from his sleeping bag holding a cup. To that, ribbons flew in a hurry to fill up the cup. Here we go again, Aizawa sighed and started the class. My pen scribbled profusely across the white pages as I wrote my notes. It was like second nature to me. I began to smile more and more as the pages filled with words, but then my hand came to a halt. Here I was, writing down notes for a dream I could never make a reality. Writing down notes because I can't let go. I should feel ashamed of myself. I don't deserve to be here. I get to watch a lesson exclusively for Hero Core students in person. I get to talk to said students as if I were an equal. I will get a paycheck that is very generous compared to the effort I have to put in. All day, I just fill up a coffee cup with my Quirk. And Aizawa? What's his motive in all this? The bell sounded, marking the end of the class. The students began packing up and preparing for the next subject. Midoriya, come, Aizawa grumbled with a yawn and exited the classroom. Izuku bowed to the class before stepping out to join him. He's a quiet one, isn't he? A pink-haired girl smirked. Kinda cute too. Mina. What? It's true, she exclaimed, turning to face her blue-haired friend. I will admit, he would look nice in a... Anyway, he may be cute, but he's too shy and meek-looking, Mina sighed, slumping on her desk. Aw, cheer up. Maybe he isn't that bad. It's only the second day he's been here, maybe he will loosen up in a week or so, another classmate suggested. I don't think you should be hitting on poor Midoriya, Ribbit. We may scare him away. You just want him for yourself, don't you, Itsu? I know what you're playing at. I'm not blind, Mina declared, smiling and pointing a finger. Don't be ridiculous. I don't have time for such distractions as boys, the frog girl stated, her eyes flicking to someone with soft brown hair before quickly looking back at her desk, trying to hide her warm face and tinted pink cheeks. While the girls were drawn into the conversation, the boys either observed in amusement or felt pity for Midoriya. Some looked like they couldn't care less. Todoroki was one of them, staring blankly at his classmates with his chin resting on his hand. To think Aizawa's new assistant would cause all this commotion, he thought. Though, Mina did start this whole debate. He let out an irritated sigh. All he wanted was peace. Why couldn't he ever have that? A soft huff escaped him. Oh well, at least the conversation is somewhat entertaining. Aizawa and Izuku moved from classroom to classroom as the day went on. The routine of filling cups, learning, writing, and repeating continued. The feeling Izuku had in homeroom didn't go away. In fact, the guilt only grew until he couldn't take it anymore. Mr. Aizawa? I have a question, Izuku said quietly, walking beside the older man. Well, spit it out. Won't do much good stuck in that brain of yours. Izuku turned his head to Aizawa and clenched his fists tightly. Why did you hire me? He asked, making them stop in their tracks. You said it was because you needed caffeine or something along those lines. But I just can't accept that. And it feels wrong. I'm here all day, being paid by the hour, getting to enjoy the luxury that is you, and all I do is refill a coffee cup. Izuku let his concerns and guilt spill out, his words rushing like a flood. Aizawa listened patiently, even as they became frantic. How is that fair? I'm practically doing the same thing I was when I didn't have a job, but I'm given access to hero classes. I'm allowed to do what I want as long as you supervise. Students try year after year to enter UA through a tough entrance exam just to be allowed on campus. But I'm only a normal kid. Izuku's distress was evident. He looked up at Aizawa, almost pleadingly, and flinched slightly at the clear look of disappointment on his face. So you're saying you don't want this job? Izuku had no words, and his gaze fell to the floor. Aizawa sighed. I respect your wishes if you really want to leave for your own reasons, he paused. But if you're doing this because you don't believe in your own self-worth, that's not right. Don't think for a second that you're worthless. You want to know why I hired you? Aizawa asked. Izuku's silence was taken as a yes. I did it because I wanted to. The words sank in before Aizawa continued. I never approved of the heroes known today. I'm sure everyone knows that, he said, making Izuku's face twist in confusion. They all become heroes for fame, wealth, and attention. It's hard to find heroes who care about what it means to be one anymore. Sure, they can start off saying they believe in this and stand for that. But as time passes, you can see that what they promised was a lie. It's hard to find worthy heroes in the new generation. Someone who deserves to be a hero, not just for fame or glory, but to do what's right. No disrespect, Aizawa sir. But I fail to see what that has to do with me, Izuku mumbled. Aizawa's features visibly softened, and he gave a small smile unbeknownst to the boy. Midoriya. I judge a person's character the same way I do with a hero. We hardly know each other, Midoriya replied, confused. That's not completely true, Aizawa stated. What? Izuku asked, bewildered. Well, not directly at least, Aizawa clarified. That's a tale for another day, but the point is, I know that you're a good person, Midoriya, he finally said with a shrug. It's as simple as that. You don't look for recognition or to be noticed for what you do in life. You do it simply out of the goodness of your heart. He crossed his arms, hardly believing he just admitted to someone they have a good heart. What was this kid doing to him? I've always visited that park every so often, and every time, I see you there without fail. Doing things with a smile and good intentions no matter what it is. And honestly, it's a bit concerning and surprising how you can be, he stated bluntly. Wow, thanks, the green-haired boy responded with a sweat drop. That makes me feel tons better, he added with sarcasm, making Aizawa chuckle. All jokes aside, it's a real shame you decided to leave the road of becoming a hero. Aizawa sighed and closed his eyes. Slowly, he opened them once again, a look of seriousness in his eyes. Maybe the reason why I considered doing this in the first place was because I have hope for you, Izuku. I have hope that one day you can show what being a real hero means, he finished. Midoriya was stunned. The words touched him deeply. But reality crushed that feeling. As much as I really want to do what you say, I can't, and I don't know what you mean. As much as I hate to admit it, my quirk doesn't allow me the privilege. For anything, he nearly shouted, telling himself what he failed to accept hurt. No, it hurt more than anyone could possibly know. But he couldn't accept those words after. Not after the incident. Aizawa observed the boy who refused his nature. It brought back memories. But he wouldn't let the same thing that happened to him happen to this boy. That may have some truth to it, Aizawa admitted. I knew it. Izuku thought bitterly, his scarred fingers clenching into his sweater with a small tremble. He knew it from the beginning. But Aizawa continued, lifting his head to meet Izuku's eyes. What does that matter to someone like you? Hundreds of people crowded the narrow streets, making it difficult for Izuku to maneuver through the massive crowd. He had just completed his second week of working as Aizawa's assistant. The time they spent together brought them to a mutual bond that not many got to share with the difficult teacher. In their own unique way, they helped each other out, Izuku with his insecurities and Aizawa with his growing loneliness. Throughout the week, Izuku met many people who were kind and considerate towards him. Some encounters were more memorable than others, particularly with Class 1B. Most of them were fine, but an interaction with a certain blonde stuck with Izuku. Aren't we so much better than Class 1A? Izuku blinked in surprise. After he mentioned 1A during introductions, Monoma started demanding confirmation that 1B was superior. Admit it. We are the better class, right? I bet 1A is all over the place. But aren't they supposed to be so much better than us 1B students? You like us better, right? We are cooler, better, faster, stronger. I can't really say. Oh come on, you have to have a few brain cells up there somewhere. Just spit it out and tell me which class is. A giant hand smacked the overwhelming blonde, sending him to his knees. What did I tell you not to do? I said, don't overwhelm the new guy, and what did you do? Exactly that. Man, are you hopeless? She was the first to greet him when he entered alone, as Aizawa had something to take care of. She seemed like a nice person, maybe not in this exact moment, but she is. Probably. Kendo. Isn't that going a bit too far? Izuku asked. He needs to learn. And he looked like he was making you uncomfortable. I couldn't just stand there, she said, crossing her arms with a slight glare in Minoma's direction before smiling back at Izuku. Izuku sheepishly nodded. Even so. I'm sure Minoma. He probably didn't mean it. Kendo. Izuku yelped when he saw Minoma's half-dead gaze staring up at them. Don't you see? I'm only trying to help. Minoma spoke calmly before standing up again. We could have such an advantage if we only took it into consideration. Class B will prevail over all. Class B will become victorious. Class B will. Smith. The blonde crumpled to the floor again. Again. Sorry. Kendo smiled as she dragged him away, leaving a wide-eyed Midoriya who had no idea what just happened. Sure was eventful, he chuckled to himself before getting bumped by a person shoving through the busy streets. What's with all these people? It's never this crowded. Izuku was trying to buy groceries for the upcoming week. Keyword, try. With the way things were going, he'd be lucky to even leave the crowd that seemed to be growing. Something caught his eye in the crowd. It wasn't much, but it gave him a strange sense of danger. It made his skin crawl, and things suddenly became eerie. Almost as if he was being watched. Get a hold of yourself. You're starting to lose it. You're in a crowded city, for goodness sake. Of course, people are watching you, he scolded himself. He must be crazy to think that. There isn't even a chance someone is remotely interested. Gah! His thoughts were rudely disrupted. The small boy was forcefully shoved out of the way by the crowd. He couldn't keep his balance any longer and stumbled, resulting in his plummet to the hard sidewalk. His squinted eyes opened to see that no one paid any mind to the boy on the floor. He groaned, rocking to his knees to stand up, trying to ignore his soreness. Hey kid, do you need a hand? A bony hand was outstretched for him to take. He took it and was hoisted up easily, which he wasn't expecting from the fairly weak-looking man. You should be more careful, boy. You could have gotten hurt. Izuku nodded his apology. Thank you, sir. Sorry for the inconvenience. In front of him stood a skeletal figure with blonde hair. He wore a white shirt with baggy cargo briefs. No problem, kid. What brings you out? Normally, this guy wouldn't stick around due to having places to be, but this kid intrigued him for some reason. I'm just out running some errands, Izuku replied softly. What a coincidence, I happen to be doing the same, the man chuckled. Something about him seemed familiar. Do you mind if I tag along? The name is Toshinori, by the way. Izuku noticed that he seemed like a pretty chill guy for someone so skeleton-like. But still, he felt awkward around people he didn't know. This man comes out of nowhere, asks to accompany me, and expects me to accept his offer? Everything about this is a red flag. Izuku thought, glancing at the guy. But for some reason, I feel as if I can trust him with my life. Strange. He shrugged. Why not? Thank you, young Midoriya, Izuku Midoriya, the curly boy replied with a curt nod. Then we should get a move on, young Midoriya, Toshinori decided and turned around to lead the way. Midoriya sighed in defeat and followed Toshinori. What's with all the coffee supplies? Are you addicted? Toshi chuckled and raised an eyebrow. Speaking of which, if you have all of that stuff, where's the actual coffee itself? Toshinori asked as the boy was checking out. Well, I don't necessarily need to buy coffee itself. I can take care of that with my quirk, Izuku told him. Your quirk? A balance flashed across the screen as Izuku paid for his items with cash, grabbed the multiple plastic bags, and joined Toshinori to walk out of the store. Oh. Yeah, I can create coffee whenever I feel like it, he shrugged. No big deal. Izuku looked over to Toshinori. Actually, now that you mention it, what is your queer? What do you mean, no big deal? Toshinori asked, wide-eyed. It's nothing really, just coffee, Izuku tried to convince him, waving a hand and making small familiar ribbons dance in the air around him, leaving Toshinori speechless. For a moment. You say that you can create coffee? He asked, trying to see if he heard correctly. Izuku nodded. As in, if I asked you to make some right now, you could? Yes? Is there something wrong with that? You're basically breaking the laws of physics, my boy, he exclaimed. That's extremely powerful, even dangerous. Yet earlier you said you were nothing special. He looked at him eye level. Why is that? Izuku stopped walking and fiddled with the edge of his shirt. Well, you see. Toshinori took in the sight before him. The boy was looking at the ground, biting his lip. The noise around them on the streets seemed to amplify Izuku's feeling of dread. He didn't want to dig up the past. It hurt. It hurt so much. So much screaming, so much anger, so much pain. Crying, blame. He didn't know why these memories were flooding back now when all he did was have a conversation. But all he knew was that the past brought pain and suffering. Because he felt it was all his fault. Toshinori laid a hand on his shoulder, making Izuku's head snap upwards. It was out of place for me to ask that. Forgive me, he apologized gently. A look of pity crossed his face when the 15-year-old hugged himself with the plastic bags still hanging loosely around his arm. I'm going home now, he mumbled and looked up with a forced smile. It was nice meeting you, Mr. Toshinori, but I'm afraid I have places to be, he said before walking off. Toshinori blinked as he helplessly watched the retreating boy, who was once again swallowed up by the crowd. The papers that covered my desk slowly began to shrink as the hours ticked by. It was like most days when the students were gone. In fact, I have been doing this every day since UA let out for Christmas break. Making sure everything is ready for the kids once they come back after New Year's is something that's beyond the comprehension of most. Despite my attitude and killjoy mood, I really do care for those kids. Some might even go as far as to call my ow. I shook my head when I remembered their smiling faces as they wished me well for the holidays. I need to focus, I scolded myself, looking at the clock. It was already 4:30, I should have been done hours ago. I groaned once more. Everyone else had already left or was blowing off their work in general. I was the only one left in the building, aside from Nizu, who stays in his office, and spending Christmas Eve alone at night working on paperwork was not ideal. Not that I would have had an eventful time anyway. Mr. Aizawa? Are you still here? Alone. Sighed from Midoriya. I groaned in annoyance as the kid's mess of hair popped into my peripheral vision. He insists on coming to check on me every single day. Unfortunately, I sighed, not looking up from my work. Yes, I did hire him to help with this sort of problem when I'm swamped with work, but I just couldn't bring myself to deprive him of a break. He's been working hard, and this is me showing my gratitude. Well, it would be if he would stop showing up to check on me. I snapped out of my thoughts when the clank of glass met wood in front of me. I nearly forgot the kid of the hour was here himself. I gave a small grunt and pushed my work aside for now, resting my chin in my hand as I stared up at the 15-year-old in anticipation with a brow raised. The 2 glass mugs placed on my desk were soon filled with eggnog. Midoriya placed the carton to the side and pulled up a chair. A tender hand lifted a glass, and he held it up expectantly. Merry Christmas, he smiled lazily. I picked up mine, and a soft ching ran through the silent room. It's actually Christmas Eve, but I'll let it slide, I stated with a small smirk hidden behind my eggnog-filled glass. Oh, whatever, the younger rolled his eyes while taking a sip. At least pretend to act happy, he huffed. Oh, but on the contrary, how can I when I was so certain you would leave me alone today? Midoriya gave a small shake of the head. That's a lie, no one wants to be alone on Christmas Eve. Does it really matter that much to you? Not really. Then why are you so insistent? It's payback for bothering me. Oh, har wise guy, I know you felt lonely, don't act like you weren't. I'm not obliged to answer that. My point exactly. I chuckled warmly and downed another sip of my festive drink. No one wants to be alone on Christmas, eh? Well, in some cases I guess he may be correct, but for someone like me, I couldn't say. Honestly, Christmas was nothing more than a day that could be enjoyable if you have people to spend time with, but when you don't, it feels quite lonely. I personally am not a fan of such events. But I'm not a good candidate to share my opinion, considering I haven't spent Christmas with anyone in quite a long time. Anyway, I came over today to see if you had any plans. My curiosity started to take over as I continued to drink. Plans? I'm free to my current knowledge, I stated with a narrowed glance. Is there a reason you ask? Midoriya's hand raised to scratch his neck. Yeah, so my mom and I are hosting a small Christmas party, and I was hoping you would attend, so. He twiddled his thumbs. Will you attend? Would you like to come? He asked, looking up. He looked shocked, probably by my surprised expression. You want me to come to your party? Well, of course. You are my boss, he exclaimed. That's exactly why I'm confused. I wouldn't ask Nizu to come to a party I was hosting. Are you sure? I asked with a quirked brow. I hope he doesn't feel obliged to invite me because I'm his boss. Well, you're not just my boss, Izuku started. You're like, what's the word? A guardian. Yeah, that's it, you're like a guardian to me, so it would feel wrong for you not to come. I was speechless. Midoriya's guardian? I must have been easy to read because Izuku tilted his head. Was I the only one who thought that? Well, obviously. I'll guess if I have to. Then I'll go. Seeing his face brighten made me feel certain I chose the right response. He jumped up with the brightest grin on his face I've ever seen. Thank you so much, Mr. Aizawa. I won't disappoint you, you're going to have the best Christmas ever. I have to go help set everything up, but the party starts at 8 o'clock sharp. See you soon. He cried in joy as he left the office. I looked over at the clock. The party starts in nearly 3 hours. I looked back at my paperwork, thinking about how long it would take me to finish that, get ready, buy a gift, and arrive on time. My attention was soon brought to the 2 glasses on the table. I mentally face-bombed. Add washing 2 cups to that list. I stared at myself in the mirror, hastily combing back my wet hair so it looked presentable. I rushed home as fast as I could after I finished my work. Only then did I realize I had no clue where my apprentice lived, so I had to talk to some people, which I despised, by the way, on the phone. Luckily, I was able to get their address. Soon after that, I jumped in the shower, jumped out, put on a nice black button-up and breathes, and now I'm combing my hair. For some reason, I started to think about Mike, and, wait a minute, how does he manage to get his hair? Focus, Shoyuta. Finally, my hair decided to cooperate, and I rushed to the sink to clean out those cups Izuku left, wrap them in some napkins, and then put them in a plastic bag. I pulled out my phone, it said it was 7, I stuck it back in my pocket. I still needed to buy a gift for the Midoriyas. It's Christmas Eve after all, it's only right to do so. I let my muscles relax as I leaned on the countertop. A shaky sigh passed my lips. I looked at the faucet of the whiny sink and stared at my disfigured form. I wonder if I should still go, I voiced to no one. Look at me. I'm a lonely grown man. Who knows who is going to be at that party, or if they even want me there. I closed my eyes slowly, trying to envision the last time I went to a social gathering. Probably when I first became a pro hero. Even then, I was dragged from the comfort of my home to attend. I opened my eyes once again. I picked up the bag, slipped on my shoes and leather jacket, and opened the door, letting the cold winter air in. My lips began to chap immediately. But I'll go for Midoriya. He is expecting me after all. I smiled, wrapping my scarf around my neck and locking my apartment door. The bright lights were starting to hurt my eyes as I walked through the snow-filled streets, Christmas decorations everywhere. People were bustling in and out of stores, likely buying last-minute gifts. I was one of them. I glanced at the display windows, noting that most items were already gone. Holding my wallet in my gloved hands, I pondered what the kid might like. Izuku was a bit of a mystery, obsessed with pro heroes, but he probably received merchandise regularly. Passing a clothing store, I decided to go in and came out with a small decorated gift bag. Checking my phone, I saw it was 7. I still had time. I found the address in my notes and started my journey through the ice and snow. The cold air ruffled my hair, and the wind carried Christmas tunes. I snuggled deeper into my scarf as the wind picked up, quickening my pace to avoid getting lost in the crowd. Just as I thought I was clear, someone bumped into me. I groaned internally, bending down to pick up the gift bag that had fallen. I continued walking, ensuring the bag was secure between my arms, feeling a bit silly. I finally reached a quieter part of town near the residences. Lights decorated the houses, creating a soft glow. The scent of baked goods mixed with the snow, creating a delightful aroma. I chuckled at my own attempt at a joke. Conveniently, I found the house just as it started to snow. I approached the door, hearing soft music and chatter from inside. Taking a deep breath, I knocked a few times. Soon, the door opened to reveal a small woman with long green hair and warm eyes. She wore a pastel blue knitted sweater, her smile welcoming. This must be Inko, Izuku's mother. They shared many similarities. Welcome and Merry Christmas. You must be Mr. Aizawa. Izuku has been waiting for you, she greeted. I nodded and entered after she stepped aside. Thank you very much for the invite, Ms. Midoriya. It's a pleasure to be here, I said with a small bow. She nodded appreciatively. Thank you for what you have done for my son, she added, her words carrying deep meaning. Mr. Aizawa, a chorus of voices chimed. It was all of Class 1A. I was taken aback. What are you kids doing here? I asked. My apprentice emerged from the crowd with a grin. I invited them all, he smiled. About time you joined the party, sensei. Denki called from the couch, holding up a plastic cup. I shook my head with a small chuckle, removing my jacket and hanging it with the others. It is a party worth attending after all, I smiled, sending Midoriya a thankful look, which he returned with an amused shake of the head. I sat on the couch, keeping to myself for the first 40 minutes, feeling out of place as a teacher partying with students. It felt. I sighed as the couch sank beside me. Aizawa? You all right? You haven't moved since you got here, Midoriya asked. I don't know, I feel if I join, I'll kill the mood, I admitted. Oh, come on, you know that isn't true, he said, frowning. When I didn't respond, he continued, just for a little bit? I remained silent until he pleaded, please? He gave me the puppy dog eyes, and like anyone with a heart, I gave in. Fine, I admitted defeat, which made him cheer and pull me to my feet. Soon, I was mingling with my students, joining the party. I chatted with them and scolded a few. Habits die hard, even if just for one night. When Izuku released me to let me enjoy myself, I almost went back to the couch, but I found myself compelled to stay. I ended up spending most of my time talking with Inko. She was a very lovely woman with a great sense of humor. The amount of embarrassing stories I could use to tease Izuku now was nearly endless. That's when I realized I was actually enjoying myself, truly and honestly enjoying myself. Minutes ticked by, and the party was supplied with food by Inko herself. I could eat this feast for hours. It tasted amazing. After we ate, everyone went back to playing games. I took part in one, and I witnessed a truth or dare game that ended with Midoriya and Bakugo holding hands, not making eye contact for 20 seconds straight. Everyone obviously had to take a picture, even me. Another activity was a competitive game of Monopoly that ended with a sobbing Midoriya on the floor. His team consisted of Ida, Todoroki, who was in box jail, and Ochako, and they were against the Baku squad. The announcer was Denki, who was shouting in joy at his team's victory. Yes, the night was a bit crazy, but as soon as it began, one by one, the kids started to leave. They had families too, after all. I let out a yawn, feeling a bit exhausted myself. That's when I realized I hadn't given Midoriya his present yet. I saw him having a chat with Ochako, and when his gaze drifted, I signaled for him to come over. He finished wishing Ochako well as she left to go home, then walked over to me, and I gave him the small bag. He looked confused before he opened it and pulled out his gift. He examined the big sweater decorated in a multitude of pastel colors. They seemed to burst and give a sense of reassurance and warmth. Merry Christmas! Before I knew it, I was tackled in a hug. I hesitantly wrapped my arms around the boy in response. I caught the subtle sound of shuffled laughter, but at the moment, I didn't mind. I felt happier than I had in a long time. We both sat up with content looks on our faces. Eve, he said. You said Christmas, it's still Christmas Eve. Izuku sat cross-legged on the couch, deep in thought, as he played with the end of his pale-colored sweater. It had been an hour or two since he arrived home and dropped the groceries by the door. Sheets of schoolwork were stacked neatly in front of him, untouched. He was supposed to be doing his lesson practice for the day, but his mind constantly fell back on the question he was asked prior to his current situation. Your quirk? You say that you can create coffee? You're basically breaking the laws of physics. That's extremely powerful, deadly even. Yet earlier, you said that you were nothing special. Why is that? Why? That's all that rang in his head over and over again. Izuku shifted uncomfortably the longer he pondered. Everyone says his quirk is amazing and that it has so much potential. An old friend who moved to another city long ago even said that he still had loads of potential to be a hero if he wanted. That his quirk was amazing and unstoppable. And as a kid, as naive as it was, Izuku took those words to heart and cherished them, even believed in them. But then Izuku stood up, cutting off his thoughts. He grabbed his earbuds, placed them in his ears, and quickly walked out the door. He decided to take it. The young man was strolling around the park he hadn't visited in a long while, letting memories and nostalgia slip and fill his mind. Recent memories like meeting Aizawa, handing out coffee, and going on strolls with his mother were so vivid and new, yet so distant and far away. Every second he breathed was another second that pushed the memories back into the growing past. To think that the actions you take in life are forever inscribed in the history of time. He gave the ground a small smile and looked around the small park being bathed in the breathtaking colors of the sunset as the chill weather soaked into every living thing it touched. By now, everyone was gone, and it was only Izuku standing on the trail winding through the park. His pace faltered when he passed a slightly worn playground with swings and a sandbox. Almost like yesterday, the memory started to play out. Hey Izuku, over here. Oh, there you are. I didn't mean to take so long. Mom was talking to me about it again. So, what are you going to do about it? You know, the whole schooling idea? The 11-year-old blinked at his black-haired friend. Oh yeah, he still doesn't know yet. Right. The schooling, I think I'll just stay at home. It's not like I have friends to go back to or anything, Izuku mumbled shyly, watching his elder hum in thought. I guess you're right. I would love you in my school. Then I could introduce you to my buddies, but then again, by the time you transferred, it wouldn't be long till I moved, he pouted with a sigh. The mood of both the 11-year-old and the 13-year-old seemed to decline after that. Hey Aizu, sorry. Why do you keep apologizing? It's not like you had a say in it. Besides, it'll be great for you and your family. Your dad finally got that promotion. You can afford better schooling and all of that fancy stuff. The boy grinned, oozing support. The older chuckled with a smile. Well, I'm not too sure about all that, but thanks, little buddy, he chuckled, grabbing Izuku's head to give him a hair ruffle, ignoring the boy's adorable complaints. Make sure to take care of yourself by the time I leave, okay? He ordered. Izuku tilted his head up so he could meet his eyes. Whatever you say, Shindo. He smiled at the playground's ever-melancholy atmosphere. He kept walking and pulled his turtleneck higher to his chin, thinking of his old dark-haired friend. Shindo came out of nowhere one day and started playing with Izuku after starting a conversation about school. Ever since then, they got extremely close right before he moved. Even thinking of that day again left a sour taste in the boy's mouth. Nothing was ever intentional, but all the same it happened. Ms. Midoriya, do you mind if I borrow Izuku for the hour? Izuku looked towards his mom for confirmation, and she laughed. Afternoon to you too, Shindo, she smirked, making the boy blush from the embarrassment of being unintentionally rude. Just get him home before supper, then we'll have a deal. The boy jumped up to shake her hand happily, startling the woman. Thank you so much. I promise, he sang as he ran off, dragging Izuku behind him to the park. Shindo? Shindo, why are we here? Shindu, Izuku whined at his friend, who was clearly concentrating on something else. Why didn't you tell me? Huh? Izuku was taken aback. Tell you. What? That you had a quirk. All this time, I thought you were quirkless. I'm your best friend, Aizachan, why didn't you tell me, he complained. What are you waiting for? Show me, he said excitedly. I can't do that. Come on, Izuku. I don't know. Shindo, it's not safe. I was told not to. Izuku, I'm moving, and this may be the only and/or last time I'll get to see you or your quirk. At least do it for me. For your friend. Izuku couldn't resist the tone Shindo used and gave a hesitant nod. Hey. Take deep breaths, Midoriya, concentrate. He inhaled deeply and brought both his hands up into the air gingerly and slowly began the sequence of imitating a liquid's gentle flow with his hands. He squinted his eyes at his moving hands and watched as a small ball of liquid brown began to form in front of him. Shindo gasped and gave words of encouragement. Izuku felt motivated and decided to push for more, ignoring the sweat that poured down his face. Before long, he had a good-sized ball of coffee floating in front of him. Coffee? That's so unique. You're amazing, Izuku. How big can you make it? Does it ever stop growing? Ever. Stop growing? Izuku just realized his own exhaustion, but his eyes widened, and he let out a startled yelp when he realized his mass of coffee grew twice its size in the few seconds he took his eyes off of it. I didn't know I could do this, he exclaimed, vision being blocked by the growing mass. Shindo, are you seeing this? There wasn't a response. Shin.do? Out of the corner of his eyes, Izuku immediately stopped his quirk, and the ball of coffee came crashing down, some splashing on Izuku and Shindo, who was barely keeping himself up on all fours. Izuku hissed in pain but was more concerned about his friend. On closer inspection, Shindo's whole body seemed to be trembling for air, his face was a deep red, and his eyes were bloodshot, almost as if he were suffocating. Shindo, are you okay? Here, let me help you up, we can go to my house, my mom will know what to do. He was abruptly pushed away the moment he laid a hand on the male. S-Shin.do? Don't you dare lay a hand on me, you monster. M. Monster? You tried to hurt me. I thought we were friends. But forget about pro-heroes. Forget about saving the day. With a quirk like that, all you would do is cause more trouble than good. Being a villain is more down your alley. Shindo, why are you saying these things? Izuku asked, horrified, falling to the ground and landing on his rear. You said we were friends. I told you we shouldn't. The brunette turned his head, and his blazing brown eyes glared with malice. How was I supposed to know such a freak would have such a dangerous quirk? He yelled. Izuku couldn't handle the overwhelming negativity directed at him. Tears streaming down his face, he ran away and didn't look back. The weather felt cold and damp against Izuku's back as he recalled the events that led him to vow never to use his quirk to please others. He smiled faintly, remembering his younger self's determination. After his mother, Inko, discovered what happened, she reached a compromise with him. He pulled up his sleeve to reveal faded marks, quickly covering them again due to the chill. The sun had set, and Inko was expected home soon. Reluctantly, he headed back. Izuku clearly remembered the doctor's analysis given to his mother a week after various tests. The file explained how his quirk affected Shindo. Izuku's quirk, known as coffee drainage, allows him to create coffee from thin air. This ability stems from his unique skin, which can draw moisture from himself and his surroundings to purify and create coffee. The family initially wondered why coffee and not another liquid, but the explanation was straightforward. Izuku's hand movements trigger his skin's special elements, releasing them into particles that imitate coffee's taste. However, the quirk is dangerous. Overuse can cause his body to draw moisture from the largest available source to replenish itself, living up to its name, coffee drainage. Upon reaching home, Izuku was greeted by his worried mother. Dear, I got worried. Supper in 5. He nodded and went upstairs to change. His quirk frightened him, and he often questioned why he felt so ordinary despite having such a unique ability. The answer was simple. He wouldn't allow himself to feel special as long as the shadows of his past loomed over him. In class, Denki was entertaining everyone with his antics. I'm just saying that it's a valid point, he insisted. What about that is valid? Or a point? Someone retorted. Denki grinned. Now, on with the magnificent, unpredictable, incomprehensible Denki sessions. His classmates groaned in amusement. Denki continued, we have fingertips on our fingers, but we don't have toe tips on our toes. Yet, we can tiptoe but not tip finger. That's... Hagakure began, unable to finish her sentence, stunned like the rest of the class. I know. Good, isn't it? Denki beamed, proud of himself. Shocking, I know, it left me stunned for days. No, not that, Jiro interrupted. Can we just acknowledge the fact that Denki said something that requires more than 2 brain cells to comprehend? You're right. Mineta exclaimed. What did you do with the real Kaminari? Denki stood, bewildered by his classmates' disbelief. I'm not that stupid, guys. A scoff from Kaken made Kirishima laugh, and soon the whole room was filled with laughter. Even Kaken couldn't hide his amused smirk, while Denki sulked in the corner. Izuku tried to stifle his laughter in his sleeve but couldn't help joining in. Aizawa had left a little while ago, putting me in charge of the class after being called to the principal's office. Before he left, the class was discussing the benefits and drawbacks of various support items, debating which brands were best and most durable. At some point, Denki decided to take control and started his sessions, which always amused me. Midoriya, I yelped as Denki's fingers slowly appeared over the edge of Midoriya's desk, revealing a defeated face. Midoriya, don't tell me. Not you too, he whispered dramatically. Don't be so dramatic, that's my job, Aoyama interjected with a hair flip that seemed to sparkle. I blinked, wondering if he actually sparkled or if it was just my imagination. The class began to calm down, and everyone broke into their own conversations. I found myself gazing out the window at the windy day. The sky was a blue-gray, covered with clouds moving peacefully. Everything was so calm that I took a deep breath, getting absorbed in the scenery. Midoriya-sen, I felt a soft tug on my sweater and turned to see Shoto's different-colored eyes. Despite his usual cold demeanor, he could be warm and gentle at times like this. May I be excused to the restroom? He asked softly. I nodded with a smile. Yes, just try to be back in the next 5 minutes, Todoroki-san. He looked relieved and nodded in appreciation. Thank you, he said. No need, I replied, watching him leave the room quietly. No one seemed to notice he even left. He probably could have slipped out and back in without asking. A few minutes passed, and Todoroki returned to his seat unnoticed. More time passed, and soon it was lunchtime. I dismissed the class, wishing them a good day since I wouldn't see them for the rest of the day. The interchangeable schedule for teachers can be confusing sometimes. I looked around the cafeteria for Mr. Aizawa with both of our lunches on a tray. They were serving pork cutlet bowls, and they looked amazing, but I couldn't find Mr. Aizawa. I decided to try the teacher's lounge, figuring it was worth a shot. As I approached, I could feel the essence leaving the food the longer it sat untouched. Luckily, before I gave in to my growling stomach, the teacher's lounge came into view. I pushed open the door slowly. HM? Oh, what's up, Midoriya? Those pork cutlet bowls are amazing today. I heard my call from the couch. I quickly set the tray down on a nearby counter and sighed. I'm sure they are. I would like to eat mine, but I can't find Mr. Aizawa. I sulked and turned to close the door. Who, me? I jumped in surprise and fell back against the door to see the very man I was looking for, looking unimpressed. Don't just do that, I exclaimed. Why ever not? You were asking for me, so I replied, he said, breaking into a smirk. Besides, you scream like a girl, quite amusing. I do not. My voice cracked, and I felt my cheeks redden. I stared at the floor in embarrassment, shaking with frustration. I heard soft chuckles from the other adults in the room, but surprisingly, they weren't directed at me. Aizawa does show emotion other than annoyance, Midnight commented with a light chuckle. He turned to give her an icy glare. And it seems you still don't know how to mind your own business. Midnight held her hands up in a playful surrender. Easy, Killjoy, I'm just messing with you, She chuckled and winked at me, making me shiver. Midnight was nice, but she could be intimidating. I knew her reputation as a hero was partly an act, and she was actually a caring person, but I couldn't help feeling nervous around her. It was only Mike and Midnight in the lounge today, excluding Aizawa and myself. I wasn't surprised to see them, but I didn't expect Midnight to be there. "Oh, that reminds me," I said, grabbing our tray and walking over to Aizawa. "Here, I didn't see you in the cafeteria, so I assumed you hadn't eaten yet." He shook his head. "I brought my own today, sorry I forgot to tell you," he apologized. I sighed. "Something told me you were going to say something like that." I laughed and sat down on the couch. "Since I paid for this, I hope you don't mind if I take it home." I stuck my tongue out and he sighed. "Go on ahead," his eyebrow twitching, making me smile in victory. "Seems you two get along splendidly these days," Midnight hummed, taking a bite of her food. "Do we?" I couldn't seem to tell. Aizawa's sarcastic reply made Midnight huff. "She's not wrong, Aizawa. You and Midoriya make an amazing pair. You know, I'm not lying," Mike exclaimed, clasping his hands in front of him. "You guys are like one of the highlights of this school now. Everyone knows and talks about you too," he grinned. "It's only been a few weeks. What are you talking about?" Aizawa raised a brow, making Mike facepalm. "Why are you always so oblivious when it comes to gossip?" "Because I find it unnecessary and idiotic," Aizawa replied with a straight face, making everyone's sweat drop. Of course, Aizawa would think that. But everyone? Talking about us? Can't be. "I haven't heard any talk either," I admitted. "See," Aizawa pointed out. "It's not only me," he grumbled. "You're both hopeless." Mike sighed. "Man, you two need a hero or something to save you from your obliviousness." "Look who's talking," I muttered, making Aizawa smirk in approval. "Did someone say hero?" A deep voice bellowed as the door opened. Aizawa let out an annoyed groan. I tilted my head in confusion and looked behind me. "What are you looking?" I felt my heart drop. Time seemed non-existent the moment I saw his smile. That smile that has inspired me. That made me admire all types of heroes. My idol. The #1 hero. All Might. About time. Why are you always so late? I've been waiting for hours, Aizawa irritably growled. "Sorry friend, I was held up," All Might grinned. But what? How? "I'm not your friend, Mr. #1 hero," Aizawa sneered, glaring. He had never wanted to strangle a man more in his life. "Don't be like that, Aizawa." All Might laughed, giving him a friendly slap on the back. Aizawa seemed to verbally hiss, walking back to his assistant, who was wide-eyed and probably overwhelmed. "Midoriya? Midoriya. I can't believe he is here. The #1 hero All Might is right in front of me. What are you waiting for, Izuku? Talk to him, walk up to him, say something." "Midoriya. What will happen if you don't? You'll never get this chance again, probably. What if I make a fool of myself? What will happen if—" "Midoriya. Oh wait, does that mean All Might is going to finally start teaching other classes? I wonder if he will be willing to." "Midoriya." Izuku yelped the moment Aizawa gripped his shoulder. The man himself looked about ready to murder, making Izuku gulp nervously. "Whyus," he spoke meekly. "This is All Might, which I'm certain you already know," Aizawa sighed. "He is going to be a permanent teacher here at the school." Aizawa tightened his grip and leaned down. "You'll be fine, Izuku," he whispered before letting go of his shoulder. He brought his hand up to pinch the bridge of his nose to stop the rising headache. He let out a long, weary sigh before speaking again. "All Might, this is Izuku Midoriya, my assistant. Shake hands, talk, do whatever. I'll be over here." The hero slowly dragged himself to the furthest couch away from the two and plopped down face first. Mike yelped, barely making it in time to avoid getting crushed. Eraser's head was a single inch away from Mick's leg, and Mike shakily sunk back into the couch, mumbling how he should be more careful. "Yeah, I can do this," Izuku reminded himself and took a deep breath. All Might, trying to maintain his composure, held out his bulky arm to the curly-haired teen. Nice to meet you, young Midoriya, he said joyfully with a calm tone while his mind spun. What? How is it possible this kid works here of all places? Yes, All Might was very calm as the boy he met a week ago grabbed his hand. The exact same boy he spent the entire day with. The exact same boy who was literally just addressed with the same greeting he used a week ago. The exact same boy who had seen his deflated form, and if he realized who he was, he would be in trouble. Yes, All Might was very calm indeed, not panicking in the slightest. Wow, Izuku stuttered and quickly shook the hero's hand. It was at this moment that Izuku realized he couldn't do this and proceeded to freak out. Abort. This was a bad idea, a really bad idea. What was I thinking? I can't talk, oh no, he's staring, say something. Say something, say something, say something. It's an honor to meet you, he yelled in a panic. God damn it, Izuku, he thought. Izuku blinked and yanked his hand back quickly, feeling awkward. I'm sorry. It's just, I can't believe you're standing right in front of me. It's been my dream to meet you, and this is really happening, oh God. He breathed, fiddling with the end of his sleeve. Izuku wondered if he had completely embarrassed himself like a fool upon their very first meeting. All Might was genuinely pleased with Izuku's natural reaction, even though Izuku was too nervous to recognize him. Meeting the #1 hero had been Izuku's dream, and All Might wanted to give this gentle kid what he deserved. After calming his earlier panic, All Might responded warmly, "It's wonderful to meet you too, young man. It's amazing how someone like you is working at UA. You must be extremely gifted," he chuckled. Izuku blushed with embarrassment. "It's not all that," he managed to reply, feeling honored. "Don't be so humble. If Eraserhead hired you, then you must be all that." All Might grinned, believing every word. Izuku felt some of his nerves dissipate. Thank you so much. I make coffee using my quirk, and that's how we met. It's quite bizarre, but I still can't believe his kindness," Izuku said, glancing at the tired hero who paid them no mind while Mike whispered something to him. "This is how I know you have the magic touch," All Might chuckled. If anyone else said that, he would probably take their head. Izuku tried to stifle his giggles. "You have a point," he shakily confirmed, letting out a few small laughs. "So what's your secret?" All Might asked once he calmed down. "My quirk allows me to make coffee," Izuku smiled. "It tends to keep him happy most of the time." All Might raised his eyebrow and pointed in Aizawa's direction, turning back to Izuku. "You're telling me that can make him happy?" he asked, lowering his hand. "Enlighten me." Izuku nodded. "He can be grumpy, and although coffee helps, he isn't all that bad. He is a really amazing person, and I look up to him," Izuku mumbled with a smile. "These days, I can't imagine life without him being there to help guide me. His words and actions always mean something, and he never intentionally hurts people. His true intention is just to keep them safe and protected, even if he does have a strange way of doing it. Everyone needs someone to help them, and I think he lets me in as close as he does because he needs help too," Izuku added. All Might didn't know what to say as the boy turned back to him. "Did I say something?" Izuku's eyebrows furrowed in concern. All Might looked at him a bit confused before realizing he wasn't smiling. The blonde sighed. "No, nothing is wrong." He started with a small smile. "I'm grateful, Midoriya." The teen's eyes widened in surprise. Me?" he repeated. "Why do you say that?" he asked, genuinely curious. "For looking after Aizawa," All Might continued. "He hasn't been the same since that day. Everyone worries about him, but we don't know how to help. He hasn't let anyone get close to him in years." He spoke soberly. "But when I heard that he got an assistant and treats him like a son," he stopped to stare directly at the boy. "I couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it." His voice went quiet, and his eyes locked with Izuku's. "But now, when I look at you, I can tell you are a pure soul, Izuku Midoriya." Izuku was tightly holding onto his sleeve, staring at the pro-hero with a newfound emotion he couldn't describe. He tried to fight the tears starting to build up at the edges of his eyes. A hand gripped his shaking shoulder. "Stay how you are, young Midoriya, and look after him," All Might smiled and let go. Izuku quickly rubbed his eyes with his sleeve and nodded to the hero. Feeling accomplished, All Might looked at his watch and laughed. It seems I have to go, everyone. I know, a sad day it is indeed, but I shall return. Have a fabulous rest of your stay here, everyone, and remember to go beyond, plus ultra. He announced and bolted out the door. But you just got here, and he's gone. Why do I even bother? Aizawa pushed himself up, a scowl on his face. I swear that man. He walked over to Izuku. Airhead didn't say anything stupid, did he? Aizawa asked, noticing his assistant's slightly puffy red eyes. Izuku shook his head. Aizawa stared before shrugging. If you say so. It's about time to head to another class. Are you ready? Izuku's eyes fell to his half-eaten bowl of food, which had likely gone cold by now. I guess I am now, he chuckled, quickly wrapping up his food and sticking it in the mini fridge. You two are leaving already? Bummer. Midnight sighed and stretched. I guess it's about time we head out too, wouldn't you say, Mike? I think so too. My kids must be dying without me, he shouted, making the woman flinch. Aizawa rolled his eyes as he leaned against the open door, waiting for Izuku to walk through. When he did, Aizawa hastily closed the door. So Midoriya, after classes, I need you to help me file some documents. Aizawa was cut off by a tackle, his eyes widened. What are you? Thank you for hiring me that day, Izuku whispered. His arms were wrapped around Aizawa's torso in a massive hug. He quickly let go and beamed with a matching smile. He turned on the ball of his feet and walked off. Eraser watched the retreating teen with sad eyes. Yeah, don't mention it. Bakugo stormed into his room and slammed the door so forcefully the house shook. His ruby-red eyes burned with anger as he threw his backpack across the room, its contents scattering loudly against the wall. Katsuki, stop making all that noise, came a voice from outside. Don't tell me what to do, old thief, he shouted back, though his mind was elsewhere. The 13-year-old slid down his door, hands tangled in his wet ash-blonde hair, muttering, I'll get them. I'll get them. He was angry because he fell for it, angry because it wasn't fair, and angry because he wanted to cry, though he believed only losers cried. It was all for him, and he couldn't stand it. Bakugo's eyes stung as tears threatened to fall. That stupid Deku. Meanwhile, in the hallways of UA Middle School, Bakugo overheard a conversation. Guys, have you heard of that nerdy kid, Izuku Midoriya? Someone asked. Never heard of him, another replied, while one of the blonde twins gasped in excitement. Oh, you mean that insufferable little brat you keep complaining about, right? The brown-haired guy who started the conversation nodded. Scum like him should just disappear. Nothing annoys me more than that brat, he snarled, a grin spreading across his face. I was just reminded of something. What if we? Why in the hell do you want to waste your time on him? The older blonde twin scoffed, still not seeing the point. The story continues with a tense encounter in the school hallway. A group of older students, led by a boy with a tired expression, are plotting to take advantage of a fellow student whose mother is critically ill. They discuss how they might manipulate him, driven by the prospect of inheriting a fortune. Despite the moral implications, they decide to confront him after school. Meanwhile, Katsuki Bakugo, a student with a complex relationship with the targeted boy, overhears parts of their conversation. Though he initially tries to dismiss his concern, he can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. As the school day ends, he decides to check on the situation. In the bathroom, the older student's corner Izuku, attempting to intimidate him. Bakugo arrives just in time to witness the bullying and intervenes, demanding they release Izuku. The confrontation escalates as Bakugo stands up to the bullies, showing unexpected courage and loyalty to his childhood friend. Despite the odds, he refuses to back down, determined to protect Izuku from harm. The two attackers shook their heads and charged at Bakugo with newfound rage. One sought revenge, while the other aimed to stand up for his sibling. They blocked the exit, leaving no option for escape. Not that Bakugo would ever consider running away. The angry teen fought back with strong punches and swift kicks, surprising them with his ability to hold his own. But while Bakugo was busy in the unfair fight of 1 against 2, he forgot about the third person. This third attacker came up behind him, grabbing Bakugo in a hold that cut off his oxygen, having thrown Izuku harshly onto the floor. Seems you can hold your own pretty well. Too bad you're outnumbered. The attacker chuckled as he dragged Bakugo to the stall and forced him to his knees. You won't get away with this. Bakugo shouted, still struggling. Let's clean up that attitude of yours, the boy said as he reached over and pulled the toilet seat handle, unleashing a torrent of water. Bakugo's head was shoved into the spinning water before he could respond. He struggled to breathe, but only water filled his lungs. Just as he was starting to black out, the water level lowered, and he was pulled back up, spluttering water while glaring at his captors. You know, I might let you go if you apologize, one of them taunted. Never, Bakugo growled defiantly. The attacker snarled and plunged Bakugo's head back into the water, repeating the CYC. When they finally stopped, they threw him onto the floor. Bakugo lay there, struggling to breathe, everything spinning around him. Despite this, he tried to move, but his body wouldn't cooperate. Izuku was horrified by the scene. He didn't understand why Bakugo had decided to help him. They weren't even close anymore. But he still came. Kaken? Kaken, wake up. Come on. You have to get up, he encouraged, trying to free himself. It's your turn next, the oldest twin said in his ear, eager to finish what they started. No, please don't do this. Izuku begged, looking at Bakugo in a panic. You can do whatever you want to me, but I need to help Kaken. Just let me take him to the nurse. Can you shut up? Do you see the position you're in? You should be worrying about yourself, not him, the brown-haired male snarled. Izuku was speechless, tears falling down his face, deeply affected by the harsh words. The attacker leaned closer, smirking. You're nothing but a big crybaby, he whispered, laughing. But suddenly he fell forward, unconscious. Standing over him was Bakugo Katsuki, breathing and eyes blazing with rage. The other two were frozen in shock, releasing Izuku in fear of what Bakugo might do next. Who wants to go first? Bakugo demanded, his voice filled with malice. The two attackers scrambled out of the bathroom, carrying their unconscious friend. Bakugo was about to chase after them but was stopped by a fit of coughing. His lungs screamed in agony with every breath. Are you okay, Kaken? Should I get someone? Izuku asked, brushing Bakugo's cheek with a gentle hand. The warmth felt nice against Bakugo's cold, wet face. But Bakugo's eyes widened, and he cut him off with a glare, slapping his hand away. You. He approached Izuku in a threatening manner, making Izuku's knees buckle as he fell backward. This is your fault, you pathetic Deku. Bakugo yelled, causing the younger boy to flinch and brace himself for a punch that never came. When he opened his eyes, Bakugo was already gone. Recalling the events made Katsuki even angrier. He knew he could have avoided the situation if it wasn't for Deku. Despite his feelings, he couldn't shake the strange sensation in his stomach. Why do I feel like this? He whispered, hugging his knees closer. A sneeze interrupted his thoughts, reminding him he was still in wet clothes. Grumbling, he got up. If I get sick, I swear. On his bed, Katsuki lay with his damp hair, wearing a baggy hoodie and shorts. He was trying to complete his homework on a separate piece of paper to avoid the wet pages. Another sneeze broke his pencil. Frustrated, he threw the book down and lay back on his pillows. The shower had eased some of his worries, but now he was just exhausted. Only 9, huh? He muttered, noting the time. He usually did homework from 9 to 10, but he wasn't in the mood. Why am I doing homework on a Friday? Wait, we don't have homework on Fridays. He picked up the book, confused. Just then he was called to the living room. Katsuki, get down here this instant. Bakugo groaned but didn't respond, instead slamming his door in defiance. He trudged down the hall, expecting a scolding, but was surprised to see his mother handing a cup of hot tea to Izuku Midoriya. With a baffled expression, he entered the room. Mom! Izuku looked up, startled, then quickly looked away. Mitsuki grinned. So the moody one finally left his room? What is he doing here? Bakugo asked, unintentionally sneering. Mitsuki gave him a look that clearly said, "Play nice." "Izuku will be staying with us for a few weeks," she stated with a warm smile at Izuku. "What?" Bakugo shouted, making Mitsuki's glare harden. "Why here? Inko and I are great friends. You know she isn't well enough to supervise anyone," she said, giving her son a warning look, which he ignored. "I know that, but why is he staying here? Where will he sleep?" "Your room, of course." Katsuki's face scrunched up in confusion. "Oh no, he isn't," he scoffed, almost in disbelief. "What? Would you rather room with me, Katsuki?" she teased. "To hell with that. I'm not a 5-year-old. "Then you won't mind setting up the futon in your room, right?" she asked. "Now go on while I talk to Izuku." Bakugo wanted to protest but knew better than to argue with his mother. He glared at Izuku. "I am not okay with this," he hissed and stomped back upstairs, slamming the door. Mitsuki sighed, noticing the saddened look on Izuku's face. "It's all right, Izuku. If it's too much trouble, I can just sleep on the couch," he offered quietly. "Nonsense, Izuku. He can SCK it up or move to the couch himself if he wants to be difficult. You both need to face each other sooner or later." She gently laid a hand on his shoulder. "I will not allow you to feel like an outsider in this house," she told him softly. "You have a place here until you can return home. Always, Izuku, remember that," Mitsuki said, helping him out of his chair after he set down his cup. They both started walking upstairs, and Izuku began to have second thoughts. "Thank you. But Mrs. Bakugo, drop the formalities, Izuku, call me Mitsuki," she insisted as they arrived at the teen's door. "Right, and Mitsuki. I really don't think this is a good idea." "You'll be fine, dear," she reassured him with a pat on the shoulder and walked off to her own room. "Oh yeah, one last thing." Izuku turned to see her smirking from her bedroom door. "Don't do anything too crazy tonight. Some people have work tomorrow." She laughed at the confused Izuku. "What do you mean?" "Ha, don't worry about it." "Good night, kiddo," she exclaimed, wiping away a tear. She closed the door with a wave and a grin. Izuku turned to the door and reached for the handle. I wonder what she was referring to. Maybe being too noisy? Talking and fighting cause noise too. Yeah, that must be it, he thought as he twisted the doorknob and pushed. Inside, he saw Bakugo sitting on the edge of the bed, earbuds in, music playing faintly. His eyes were shut tightly, as if trying to block everything out. The music was so loud that even Izuku could hear it. Bakugo sniffled slightly and wiped his nose with his sleeve. When he noticed Izuku, he asked in a surprisingly soft voice, "When did you enter?" "Just now," Izuku replied quietly. They stood in awkward silence for a few moments. Izuku took the chance to examine Katsuki's room. It had a grayish color scheme, with dark gray bed, curtains, and carpet. The bed frame and nightstand were dark brown with a polish. On the nightstand was a television and a few school books stacked neatly on a small pale yellow towel. There were a few band posters on the walls, and a poster of All Might, their favorite character from an old TV show they used to watch together. It made Izuku feel happy. "Well, are you just going to stand there all day, or are you going to close the door?" Katsuki huffed, his gaze on the carpet. Izuku snapped out of his thoughts and hastily closed the door. "All right." Izuku walked over and saw that Bakugo had set up sleeping quarters for him on a black futon, neatly spread out and looking comfortable. This brightened his mood. He shuffled over and sat down, letting out a content sigh as he lay down, realizing how tired he was. He sat back up. "Why, you don't mind if I—" "Go ahead, nerd, I already took a shower," Bakugo replied with an eye roll. Izuku turned to open his bag, noticing Bakugo staring at him. He stopped, feeling uncomfortable. When Bakugo realized he was caught staring, he quickly looked away and fell back on the bed with a sigh. Midoriya blinked in confusion before deciding to take his bag into the bathroom to avoid further awkward moments. Izuku went to the bathroom to get ready for sleep. Bakugo heard the subtle sound of the lock click and the water running. He sat up, facing the bathroom door, and sneezed again. He glared at his hands and sighed. That feeling from earlier is back. Why am I feeling like this? It's even worse than before. When his eyes lit up earlier when he looked at my posters. Why did I feel so happy? his face scrunched in anger. He slammed his fist onto his comforter with a growl. The longer he thought, the deeper his scowl became. When Izuku looked happy, it made his stomach flutter. What? Is he sick from seeing the idiot joyful or something? Well, that's obviously not it. He groaned, putting his earbuds back in and rolling over to face the wall, his back to the bathroom door. His features slowly relaxed. Did he really hate Deku like he always said? Is this what it means to hate someone? It can't be. He may hate the boy, but it's different. Deku's a special case. One Bakugo couldn't describe with mere words. Katsuki felt his eyes start to close until he heard the door open. He turned the volume on his phone down a bit but didn't turn around. He heard the blankets shuffle before everything went silent. Hey, Kaken? The blonde didn't say anything. He wasn't ready to talk yet. I just wanted to say, thank you for today. Izuku smiled under his sheets. I was really scared, you know? I didn't think anyone would find me, but there you were. Ready to save me, he mumbled, eyes clouded with subtle admiration. Bakugo stared wide-eyed at the wall. His face felt warm, and his heart rate quickened. Out of everything the younger could have said, he thanked him? I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I was really happy that the one to save me was you, Izuku whispered softly. That's enough, the blonde firmly demanded, still staring at the wall with a twisted expression of pain and regret. That's enough, Deku, he mumbled again, this time softly, with a quiver. Small and hidden, but Izuku noticed it. Just go to sleep. Bakugo sighed and sat up to turn off his lamp, making sure not to show his face to the greenette. Okay, Kaken. Midoriya mumbled and turned his head away from the blonde. Good night. It was 2 a.m., and for the life of Katsuki, he couldn't stay asleep. Bakugo sat up abruptly with a long, agitated growl of annoyance. This was the 6th time he had been woken up that night, and he was just about fed up. He turned on his lamp rather noisily, internally cringing at the sound of something snapping off. The subtle sound of blankets shuffled, and his eyes drifted to see Midoriya sleeping soundly with the most innocent look on his face. Oh, that's right, Bakugo thought slowly. He's still here. The blonde didn't know what compelled him, but he couldn't help staring at Izuku's soft locks and basking in the peaceful feeling he brought to the room. The dim light highlighted his freckled cheeks, making his skin seem to glow. Bakugo decided to look away before he became further embarrassed. What was wrong with him today? Was he a delusional moron or what? He asked himself. His mind fell silent for a few moments. He just blankly stared off into space for the longest time. That's when he remembered his dilemma and finally got out of bed. Slowly but surely, he made it into the hallway. Whether he was an idiot or not wasn't the current issue. Right now, all he wanted was a glass of water. Much time had passed since Bakugo left the room, and Izuku was growing anxious. The truth was that Bakugo had been keeping Izuku up with his constant tossing and turning, and when paired with his own nightmares, it was a recipe for restless sleep. Okay, that may be a half-lie. He fell asleep for a few hours, but when he jerked awake, Katsuki was no longer in the room. And he didn't want to be alone right now. Thoughts about his mom plagued his mind every second he was alone. Sleep had been non-existent the past few days, so when he fell asleep for more than 40 minutes, he was pleasantly surprised. But he put that aside, and even if Katsuki wasn't in the specific room, that's usually no cause for alarm. He probably went to the bathroom or something. The boy told himself to ease his worries. But after 15 minutes, he started to grow worried. It doesn't take 15 minutes to use the bathroom. Despite his better judgment, he walked over to the door and opened it. To his expectations, no one was inside. If he's not here, then where did he go? Midoriya decided to look for him and walked quietly into the hallway, trying his best to be silent. As he walked, he heard the sound of the refrigerator door shutting closed. The boy picked up his pace until he reached the entrance, and then he stopped. He saw things like eggs, flour, sugar, milk, and other baking ingredients scattered along the kitchen island in the middle of the room. What is Kaken doing? Izuku unconsciously walked further into the room, unaware that he was doing so until he was only a few steps away from the turned blonde. The oven was preheating, and Bakugo was in the middle of beating eggs inside a big metal bowl. While doing so, he oozed a sense of professionalism in every move he made. Watching him work sparked something within Izuku that he'd never felt before. It was a nice feeling, one he'd never felt. And it made him smile. "You're really good at this," the brunette finally voiced, making the blonde halt in his motions. "Have you been baking for long?" Bakugo turned to face him, bearing a questioning look on his face. He narrowly examined Izuku with his eyes, staring him up and down until he finally spoke. "Why are you in here?" Bakugo asked, his voice rough with drowsiness. "I couldn't sleep," Izuku replied. Bakugo glanced at him briefly before returning to his task, unaffected by Izuku's presence. The room was silent except for the sound of whisking. Izuku shifted uncomfortably, feeling he should help but unsure how. Bakugo noticed his dilemma and, though it was amusing, it was mostly annoying. "Mind handing over the milk?" he asked through clenched teeth, finally giving in after a few tense seconds. Izuku nodded, relieved to be helpful. As he passed the milk, Bakugo spoke. "I haven't been baking for long. I only started helping my mom about 2 years ago when my dad got a new job." Izuku was surprised. "Only 2 years?" he gasped. "Yeah, got a problem with that nerd?" Bakugo scowled, regretting sharing anything. He worried Izuku might think less of him for having baking as a hobby. "No, I think that's amazing. The way you were mixing, I thought you could be a pro," Izuku said, full of admiration. "I can't bake at all. I always mess up when I try to make something by myself." Bakugo felt a bit uplifted by Izuku's praise. "You shouldn't say things like that, Deku, not when you don't mean it," he mumbled. Izuku noticed Bakugo's flustered reaction. "But I do mean it," he insisted. "Yeah, well, whatever." Bakugo huffed, adding more ingredients. "Are you just going to stand there, or are you going to help me bake already?" he snapped. Midoriya hesitated. "I probably shouldn't. Like I said, and I said get over here. I won't let you mess up because I'll watch over you the whole time. Got that, Deku?" Bakugo demanded. Despite his initial reluctance, Midoriya felt excited to help. "I'll try my best," he exclaimed with a smile. With Bakugo's guidance, they moved smoothly from one task to the next. Izuku noticed that Bakugo seemed relaxed while teaching him how to mix ingredients correctly. When Izuku didn't get it quite right, Bakugo would guide him without anger. Despite occasional playful jabs, Bakugo seemed to enjoy himself, and Izuku was happy too. They were making a cake, and the mix was nearly done when Bakugo stepped away. "You keep stirring," he said, rummaging through the cabinets. "When you finish, pour half of the batter into that second bowl. I plan on making a marble cake, so don't mess up," he instructed. Izuku followed the instructions and asked, "What are you looking for? Did we miss any ingredients?" "No, I'm looking for food coloring," Bakugo explained. "Now, where is it? I swear it was here just a week ago." Izuku poured half of the batter into the second bowl and moved it away from the edge. "About time," Bakugo said, pulling down a box of colors. "This food coloring was made by me, so it will make the cake look much better," he claimed. Izuku admired the colors, picking one up. "Wow, these are appealing," he whispered. "Is this one okay?" he asked. "Why, that one's perfect," Bakugo stuttered, avoiding eye contact. Izuku realized he was gripping Bakugo's forearm and noticed how he was subconsciously moving closer. Izuku hastily released the older boy's arm and put some distance between them. "Why de good no, G great?" Izuku stuttered, completely embarrassed. Sorry." He squeaked before running back over to the original bowl, looking down at the floor. He coughed to break the awkward tension he unintentionally created. So, how dark should we make it?" he asked the blonde, who had finally somewhat cooled his face. "You decide, Death. Even someone like you can't mess this up," he chuckled warmly, with no ill intent behind his words. This made Izuku flush and start chuckling with him. "You have a fair point," he admitted softly. After some internal debate, Izuku put in a small amount of coloring and started mixing it until it became what he dubbed the perfect color. Katsuki peered over Izuku's shoulder to see what route he chose. "I'm not surprised you went lighter," he voiced. Izuku looked back. Did you not like it? He asked as if he did something wrong. Obviously not, Deku, he stated and ruffled the shorter boy's hair, snatching away the bowl. I just think pastel orange suits you, he smirked and poured the two batters carefully into the buttered cake pan. Izuku began to panic, wondering if he took too long to decide, but he was put at ease when he saw no hints of resentment on the blonde's face after he finished pouring in the batter. Bakugo placed the now emptied dishes into the sink and lifted the pan before slamming it back down onto the countertop. He continued to repeat this action and then spun the circular pan on top of the counter before placing it into the oven. What was all that about? Izuku questioned. It just evens out the batter, which allows the cake to properly rise so it's level and not uneven, he explained with indifference as if everyone knew that trick. I didn't know that, Izuku told him, dumbfounded. Of course you didn't, idiot, he smirked. Now, here is the next lesson, he spoke up, enjoying the role he held. We are going to make buttercream icing next for the cake. He started and they once again got back to work. Halfway through the process, Katsuki lifted his spoon and held it out in front of Izuku. Here, try this and tell me what you think. Izuku blinked. Katsuki wanted him to taste the icing? He looked at Katsuki for confirmation, but all he did was shake the spoon. Izuku shrugged and leaned forward slightly to taste the icing. He pulled back with a humming noise. It tastes really good. I like how it's not extremely sweet. The subtlety of any sweetening elements is a nice touch, he smiled. Cake fondant and icing tend to be too sweet for me when Mom buys them from the store. So I like the change up. Katsuki nodded, trying to be a bit mindful of Izuku when he added the sweeteners. I make my icing differently than others, Deku, he boasted. Well, how was I supposed to know? Izuku pouted slightly. There are a lot of things you don't know, Deku, Katsuki playfully pushed his shoulder. Hey, that was uncalled for. Izuku laughed and pushed him back, making him stumble, which surprised Katsuki. Says who? Bakugo asked with a raised brow after recovering from his previous shock. Says me. Izuku stuck his tongue out in a teasing manner as he walked to the bowl of icing. The blonde smirked. Oh, we will see about that. The next thing Bakugo knew, he was hit with a handful of icing by none other than Izuku Midoriya. Katsuki had no response as it slid down the side of his face. In front of him, Izuku was laughing like there was no tomorrow. How did you not see me coming? He asked between laughs. Bakugo growled. Real mature, Deku. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist, he giggled. If that's the case, then take this. Bakugo tried his best to salvage the icing and launch it at Izuku, and to his luck, he struck him right in the center of his face, making him yelp. Now it was Katsuki who was doing all of the laughing. Midoriya tried to get the buttercream off his face but only managed to smear it further. Hey, that wasn't very nice, Kakin, he voiced with giggles. You started it, Bakugo chuckled, holding a wet rag and quickly washing his face. Now, get over here, he ordered lightly, waiting for Izuku to come to him, and when he did, Katsuki began to slowly remove the icing off of Midoriya's face. For some reason, the close contact didn't bother either of them at the moment. They strictly enjoyed each other's presence being so close. You should smile more, Izuku spoke. And why is that, nerd? Bakugo sked, now cleaning around Izuku's nose. Because it's a good look on you, he whispered softly. After that sentence, Katsuki shoved the rag into Izuku's face. Would you look at that? The cake is finished. He turned and walked over to the oven. Both of the boys chanted internally with burning faces. When Bakugo opened the oven after turning it off, he peered inside, and his jaw fell. How in the world? Izuku jumped up and rushed beside Katsuki. What's wrong? He asked, watching Katsuki pull the pan out of the oven to reveal a perfectly smooth cake. Pastel orange swirled together in irregular harmony with pastel green. Appealing. It has no bubbles. Katsuki shouted, feeling extremely proud. He brought it to the fridge and opened the freezer to place the cake inside. Now all we have to do is wait for it to cool, he smiled. The two managed to make a second batch of icing without throwing it at one another. Although they came close to starting another war, they instead made small talk. Izuku managed to lighten up Bakugo's mood, which took down some defensive walls he kept rebuilding. Both boys stood in close proximity to one another as they iced the cake. At this point, both were just having the time of their lives. Yes, both were sleep-deprived and not necessarily in the state of mind they normally would be, but they couldn't be bothered to acknowledge that fact. It was now 5:15, and both had fallen into a comfortable silence. Bakugo had just finished piping the little peaks around the edge of the white iced cake. Izuku had prepped orange slices to Bakugo's instruction. They each grabbed the thin half slices and began finishing the decorations. "Kaken," Izuku asked, gaining the other's attention. "Why did you want to make a cake?" Bakugo thought about how he should respond, but he found no harm in telling the truth, so that's exactly what he did. "I was angry." Izuku looked at him in surprise but then looked downcast. "It was because of what happened at school, wasn't it?" he replied meekly. Bakugo stared at him and slowly nodded. "Yeah, it was." Katsuki sighed. "I baked to calm myself down." Izuku nodded somberly. "I see." Katsuki placed down the last orange slice and stepped back to admire the dessert. He felt proud, probably the proudest he's ever been. For a second he couldn't pinpoint why he felt so proud. But then he realized that the answer was right in front of him. Deku made this cake worth it. Deku had come down to check on him. Deku helped him even if he didn't need to. He could have refused, resisted, but he didn't. He felt so proud all because of Deku. And now Deku looked discouraged because of something he said. And that didn't make him feel proud. "Deku," Bakugo began. "Wasn't your fault." He said nothing more, nothing less, but it meant everything to Izuku that he forgave him. He walked up to Bakugo's side, and that was when he felt complete. "Can we have some cake now?" "I'm starving," Izuku asked as if on cue. His stomach growled. Katsuki playfully scoffed. "Of course we can, idiot." And with that, Bakugo grabbed a knife and began cutting the cake. When he removed the first slice, he slid it gently onto one of the porcelain plates he had previously prepared and passed it to Midoriya. Midoriya was in awe at the mix of orange and green. On the outside, the cake looked just as plain as any other. It was decorated in a way that drew a certain type of person in just enough to grab your attention. And the moment you cut deep and learn more, you can find one of the most appealing, caring, kind things one has to offer. Both now had their pieces and began to count down. 3, the blonde began. 2, the other joined in. 1, they said as one. Both pieces entered, and their reactions were more or less the same. A reaction of absolute happiness. "This by far is the best thing on the planet." Bakugo nodded with conviction. The green-haired boy agreed wholeheartedly with the statement. Izuku nodded his head, which rested on his arm. His upper body was leaning on the counter while he waited for Bakugo to finish the cake, the only thing he no longer needed to help with. "It's a perfect balance," he stated after he ate the last bit on his plate. "The only thing that comes close to this is my mom's Christmas cakes." Izuku laughed. Mitsuki always came over to help her decorate. Bakugo nodded. "I do remember Mom always leaving us about 4 hours before making dinner. I always thought that she just took too long to pick out groceries," he chuckled. "Maybe. If things were different, she wouldn't have to leave." His eyes flashed with sorrow as he spoke. His voice slowed in tempo. "We could have had a joint Christmas." Izuku felt his throat begin to constrict. "If Mom wanted to, of course," he smiled sadly at the plate. "Mom just wanted to spend time with one another," he choked, "but I was always too scared to do anything that wasn't with her. I wonder that if I will even do anything with her again." "You will." "The doctors said she has a slim chance of surviving her next surgery. And I. Izuku trailed off and propped himself up on his elbows while covering his face with his trembling hands. "I don't think she will make it," he cried out to the baker softly. "Stupid idiot," Katsuki whispered, removing Izuku's hands from his tear-covered face. Little rivers of glistening crystals from his saddened eyes ran down his freckled face. Katsuki forced Izuku to face him. "Look at me," he ordered firmly. Izuku just stared at the counter. "Izuku." Katsuki spoke softly. "Please look at me." Midoriya slowly raised his gaze to meet Katsuki's eyes, his warm, concerned eyes that just wanted to help. Can you name one person stronger than your mom? The person who raised you single-handedly. The person who cares and worries for you every day. The person who has supported you your whole life, he spoke. She will make it through this, Izuku, he reassured the boy as they both slid down to the floor. Izuku buried his head in Katsuki's hooded chest. Soft sniffles echoed in the room as he rubbed relaxing circles on his shoulder. I'm so scared that she won't, he sobbed. Katsuki wrapped his arms around Midoriya, pulling him close. I know, he repeated softly. Midoriya released his worries, sharing every dark thought that had crossed his mind. He spoke about feeling alone in his struggles and how it troubled him not being able to see or talk to her. Katsuki listened intently, comforting him as if it were second nature. Supporting Izuku was all that mattered to him. Eventually, Midoriya's sobs turned to soft whimpers and then light snores. He leaned against Katsuki, who let him rest, feeling sleep overtake him as well. The kitchen fell silent, save for the gentle snores of the two boys. Mitsuki entered the kitchen with a yawn, unsurprised to find both boys asleep on the floor. She chuckled, snapping a quick picture as a playful form of payback for keeping her up all night. As she left the room, Katsuki instinctively pulled Midoriya closer, making him smile. Demon nerd, he murmured affectionately. The day was warm and bright as the Midoriya household buzzed with high spirits. Izuku's mother, Inko, watched her son head off to work with a massive grin. She chuckled softly when he nearly tripped, sending him off with a heartfelt farewell. Once the door closed, she sighed lightly, preparing herself for her own workday. Watching Izuku grow and achieve what once seemed impossible brought her immense joy, especially after the challenges of his childhood. Despite past hardships, Izuku's resilience shone through, and Inko felt proud of his accomplishments, especially his role at UA. She was determined to be a supportive mother, hoping to make her son proud in return. Meanwhile, at UA, Izuku was tasked with delivering papers to Nizu's office. After a brief exchange with Aizawa, he made his way to Nizu's door, taking a deep breath before knocking. Nizu welcomed him warmly, offering a smile as Izuku handed over the documents. Ah, Midoriya. What a pleasant surprise, Nizu said, scanning the papers. Thank you very much, Midoriya. Izuku, feeling a bit awkward, nodded. It was no problem, Principal Asai, he began, but Nizu interrupted with a friendly correction. Please call me Nizu. After a brief hesitation, Izuku accepted Nizu's invitation for tea. As they settled in, Nizu poured a cup for Izuku, who accepted it gratefully. So, any gossip worth mentioning? Nizu asked with a smirk, catching Izuku off guard. Midoriya chuckled, surprised by the principal's interest in such matters. Oh, it can't be that hard to believe. I just enjoy my drama every now and then. Nizu sipped his tea. And when it's two people chatting over casual things, that's often when the tea is spilled. Midoriya shook his head lightly in amusement. He decided there was no harm in humoring the intelligent principal, at least just this once. Well, there is this one rumor. So, Midoriya, would you like to explain to me why you went missing for a whole hour today? Aizawa's eyebrow twitched in annoyance after he finally found his assistant. Izuku averted his eyes with a nervous smile. Well, you know what? I honestly don't care enough right now to hound you for this. But if I find out you were smoking, drinking, or... I was talking to Nizu. Midoriya quickly cut him off with a red face. He wanted to talk with me over tea, and the time just slipped my mind. He bowed quickly. I apologize. Aizawa pinched the bridge of his nose and gave another heavy sigh. Well, if you were with Nizu the whole time, I guess you were still supervised to some extent. He shot a glare. Although I would have appreciated the heads up. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir, he mumbled. Aizawa sighed deeply. I guess I can turn a blind eye to it this time, but do not think that you can get away with it again. Midoriya nodded in confirmation and let out the breath he was holding in relief. Aizawa's stern mood began to lighten as he walked over to sit on the couch in the staff lounge, finally landing with a solid thud that screamed of exhaustion. Anywho, do you happen to have a cup on you? I really need some coffee and I need it now, he groaned with added emphasis. Midoriya quickly nodded and ran over to his locker to grab one. He once again filled it up, this time without any fancy displays like the other times, and handed it to Aizawa. When life gives you lemons. Aizawa mumbled, narrowing his eyes at the cup. Eat them. Eat them all. Don't be a coward. Eat them. You've got to tell me where I can find these cups. But, do you want some yourself? If that's the case then. No. Echa? Then why did you want to know? So I can burn the store that sells them to the ground. And that's it for the day, the pro hero yawned, lifting his hands from his keyboard to stretch. Are you done too, Aizawa? What luck. That means we can walk home together today. Isn't that great? A certain loud-mouthed hero yelled, startling Aizawa. He instinctively groaned and face-bombed in response. What luck indeed. Man, do I hate my life. Yamada already hoisted up Aizawa out of his chair and began dragging him while ignoring protests from the unwilling adult. Izuku paid no mind to this now nearly frequent occurrence and finished packing up his backpack. He was in quite a good mood and couldn't wait to get home and talk to his mother. He emerged happily through the U.A building with a bright look on his face and began to make his way home. While walking on the outskirts of the campus, he decided to take out his phone so he could listen to his music. Izuku furrowed his eyebrows in concern when he saw multiple missed calls from his mother. He tried to dial her back, but he cursed when he realized he had no service, which was strange since he always had service near the school. But that didn't matter right now. According to the sinking feeling in his stomach, something was clearly wrong. A large cloud covered the sun as Midoriya began to run home in a newfound hurry. He was breathing and on his knees by the time he reached the front entrance of his house. Izuku stood up after finally catching his fleeting breath and gulped in a newfound anxiousness that engulfed his body. Hesitantly, he pushed open the door. It didn't help his nerves to find all the lights in the house turned off. Midoriya shakily took a step inside. Mom? Are you in here? He turned on the lights and closed the door. He barely entered the living room when he heard a sound coming from upstairs. It was a crash. Izuku immediately bolted up the stairs with a look of terror crossing his face. He turned sharply towards his mom's room and slammed open the door. Sure enough, he found his mom, but she was in a heap, crying on the floor. Her hair was a mess, and her eyes were puffy and red. She looked completely devastated as she clawed at her head, sobbing loudly. And surely enough, there her lamp was, shattered on the other side of the room. His scared eyes widened, and he immediately dropped all of his things to run by her side. What's wrong? Are you hurt? What happened? Was there a break-in? She burrowed herself into her son's chest and heaved heavily. I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I couldn't. She choked out as her son rubbed her back comfortingly. He lowered his voice to comfort her. Mom, why are you sorry? You're okay, right? Everything is going to be okay. What are you apologizing for? He whispered and rocked her gently. We might lose the house. She sniffled and clutched onto her son, who blinked in confusion. She pulled back to look him dead in the eye with a look of clear shame. Everything's going to be taken. And we can't stop it. She whispered, her voice trembling in fear. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Izuku. You're joking, right? Izuku asked, his voice filled with disbelief. What do you mean we're going to lose the house? Izuku was stunned by the news and looked at his mom, hoping it was a misunderstanding. You're just playing with me, right? But the way she stared at the floor in shame made it clear this was no joke. Tears welled up in her eyes as she struggled to speak. Mom. Izuku took a deep breath, trying to steady his voice. What's going on? She whispered, struggling to continue. Izuku waited, sensing his silence was making her more anxious. You were younger. And the Shindo family took us to court for. We lost a lot of money, she began, nervously twiddling her thumbs. Izuku flinched at the mention of the name, feeling uncomfortable. He never liked discussing what happened, but he would listen for his mom's sake. She hugged herself tightly. We weren't in good condition and Almost had to place you in foster care. I gave you as many meals as I could so you could eat every day. I tried to focus on your studies and finding a different job, but between that and your hospital visits, we were almost broke. Izuku bit his lip in guilt. He remembered their struggles but didn't realize how dire things were. I was desperate. I had no other choice but to call. To call and ask for his help. Izuku looked at her, confused. Who are you talking about? I'm talking about your father, Izuku. In that moment, Izuku felt his world shift. He looked at his mom in disbelief, the room filled with tension, fear, and shame. But you. I had no other choice. Mom. I know already, she choked out, covering her face. I didn't have any other options. I was so desperate that I had to ask him for help. Her voice broke, and Izuku's eyes stung with tears. I couldn't lose you too. She wiped her tears with her sleeve, shaking. He said as long as I paid him back, I could use the money however I needed. He didn't give me a deadline and said I had plenty of time to repay him. There was more than I expected, Izuku. I was so relieved. You could live a proper life, and I wouldn't have to send you away. It mostly covered your hospital bills, but even with the leftover money, we were stable again. He offered me a job using his connections. But I didn't know he would want it all back now. Inko cried. When I said I couldn't pay, he said he'd take the house. I forgot he owned the deed. Oh, I'm so foolish. I know I shouldn't have taken the money. I know I shouldn't have asked. I know I shouldn't have turned to the man who has let me down time and time again. She tugged at her hair, her breathing ragged. You must think I'm a terrible mother. It's pitiful to think we're back in this position because of my mistake. I keep messing up, I keep doing and saying the wrong things, I keep failing you. I even went back to him like he said I would. Maybe he's right. Maybe I really am just a sorry excuse for a mother. Izuku cut her off with a tight hug, suppressing a sob. It's okay, Mom. It's okay, so please. Just stop saying those things about yourself. He clutched her, his fingers digging into her shirt. He began to shake, unable to hold back his tears. You're the best mother I could ask for. You did all of that for me, Mom. Don't listen to anything he's ever said about you. None of it is true, Izuku sniffed. You've made mistakes, but please don't speak of yourself that way. You've worked so hard for years. Don't act like you haven't fought for where we are today. I am proud to call you my mother, okay? Izuku said, pulling away with a teary smile. I know you can't help but think of him when you're in trouble. I know you loved him and trusted him. Even if I never met him, I know he was important to you, which makes it hard to let him go. Inko's tears fell faster as the reality settled in. But no, Mama. You can't keep going to him. He isn't the same person he was. And you need to realize that he isn't coming back, Izuku whispered softly. Inko nodded, swallowing hard, unable to trust her voice. She ran a trembling hand through her messy hair and took deep breaths. We can still find someplace else to stay, she said, giving him a sad look. I can start searching soon. And with your job, we should be able to manage. Izuku blinked in question as she flinched. Is something wrong? I'm jobless too. He took everything, Inko replied hollowly, clearly having given up. And I still owe him so much debt. She looked at him with defeated eyes. Maybe it's best that you move out while I... No! Izuku yelled, interrupting her. We are not doing that. I'm not leaving you, Mom. This is my fault, and I will help you fix it. I'll find a way, he stated, looking at his mother, who gazed back with exhausted eyes. He softened visibly and lowered his voice. But for now, you need to rest. Izuku, I'm fine. Please, he pleaded, his voice breaking. She sighed softly and nodded. Izuku supported her to her bed and helped her in. She looked at him with tired eyes, but a small smile was evident as she cupped her son's face. What did such a mess of a mother do to deserve such an angel for a son? She chuckled weakly. Izuku gave her a reassuring smile, his hand overlapping hers on his face as they cherished the moment. Both took comfort in one another as any mother and son should. Inko's eyes drooped shut, and she sighed contentedly, finally relaxing on the soft bed. I love you, Izuku. The freckled boy pulled away gently and placed her hand on her chest. Get some rest, Mum. I love you too. Izuku gave one last look at Inko before exiting the room and shutting the door softly. Once it closed, he could no longer hide the despair on his face. What was he going to do? What could he do? He hated seeing his mom in such a broken state. She hadn't been like this for a long time. He thought they had finally gotten on the right path to recovery. But just when everything seemed to be going right, life threw another wrench into the mix. Izuku bit his lip in frustration, clenched his fists, and his eyes watered. He gritted his teeth before turning from the door and walking down the hallway into the living room. His walk soon turned into a rush jog, and he slammed the door open into the sun-setting afternoon. The sky had just begun to change colors as the teenage boy rushed out, uncertain of his destination. The only certainty was that he wouldn't be home until the dark sky enveloped the remnants of the previously bright and welcoming day. I'm sorry, but it seems there is no story content in the provided text chunk. If you have a different section of the story that you would like cleaned up, please provide that text, and I'll be happy to help.